OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Good morning and welcome to OTB AM on this Friday morning, the 8th of January. Hope all is well with you. Eoin, Sheahan, good morning to you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, many happy returns. How are you keeping?
I'm good, yeah. We're still within that window that Kenny Quinlan would insist that once you get to double digits, no more Happy New Year, but we're all right for the minute, I think.
I think so. I think that you start with the first Monday of the year, the first working day back, and then you do one of every day saying Happy New Year to everybody or to one of each person, and then you're done. That's it. It's a simple form like any. It's
just a good wish on, isn't it? It's like Kenny, by his own admission, a bit of Victor Meldrews about him. We're in a sort of an interesting time, aren't we, in terms of where we're at with sport generally across the planet, and some chat about obviously Liverpool Villa tonight, with Villa fairly heavily struck by COVID cases and having to field an under-23 team, and we're not sure exactly where it's all going at the minute.
Yeah, Rory O'Connor on Wednesday Night Rugby was saying enjoy while it lasts in relation to the Pro 14 this weekend. You get a similar feeling with the football at the moment as well. Gary Lineker suggesting last night that the whole thing could succumb to COVID at the moment, which would be a bit of a disaster, to be honest, for the footballing authorities. It might be the right thing at the end, but you look at Aston Villa, for example, they kind of need to field the team tonight because they don't have too many blank window fixtures. You look through their calendar coming up and forget about weekends, first of all. Their weekends are all full, but even midweeks, they're kind of all full as well. We've got a Euros coming up this year and the Premier League can't really afford to be pushed back once again. So they're really up against it. And that's why we're seeing tonight that Aston Villa are going to play an under-23s team. That might be because it's the FA Cup and they might say, fair enough, we're focusing on the Premier League because we're having such a good season. But we'll see now next midweek because there's a suggestion that Burnley and their game could be in trouble next week as well. And they're due to play Manchester United. That is Manchester United's game in hand. And all of a sudden you're looking at teams and they're running out of games. And there's a sense of enjoy this weekend while it lasts, or maybe football will think to itself, we just have to power through regardless. And there's going to be a lot of kids who are going to get a lot of chances over the next few weeks. But I guess you're one of the lucky ones. You're one of the ones who's actually managed to exist in the same sphere as an actual sporting event over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I haven't been on since I was at the All-Ireland football final, and it was an incredible experience to be at in so many ways. Really weird experience in so many ways. The three words maybe that I'd use to describe it would be eerie, exhilarating, and inevitable. Eerie in that, like, the drive, from everything from the drive down there on was so weird. Like, yourself, been down on Ireland final day, the thousands of people you have milling around, and you're psychologically prepared for that not to be the case this time around, but nothing actually matches been down and around about the ground beforehand, and there was literally nobody there. A couple of onlookers who were down just out of interest to have a bit of a mooch around and see what the hell does this thing feel like. And it was weird. It was eerie, and that continued inside the ground, obviously, with nobody milling around. And from a press point of view, you generally wouldn't be, there'd be a few more people knocking around, but you wouldn't be exposed necessarily to that same experience as if you're in as a punter anyway, so that you are a bit cosseted from that either way. But certainly eerie, and then obviously when you're out and about in the Hogan stand in advance of the game, and they're going through all the rituals that you'd normally hear in terms of like warm-ups and the bit of music being pumped in and that sort of stuff, and then just very eerie from an empty ground point of view. Exhilarating in that it was the All-Ireland football final, and you had to sort of remind yourself of that it wasn't like cold February kind of National League game where there'd been a big marketing campaign and Jedward were about to play at half time and a bunch of people were going to come in late to the match. Like, you had to remind yourself of that constantly. Not as cold as I'd prepared for. I'm not sure I've ever prepared more for a game in terms of the
well, stepping outside the house, Adrian, is the key point. Like, I mean, it's not just going to a game, just leaving your home, really.
Yeah, definitely. And look, at meeting people down there as well, like having conversations with other human beings who aren't aged 4 and 2 in itself was really an incredible experience, to be honest with you. I enjoyed that no end. And inevitable in that I think that it definitely didn't reach 2017 proportions. Like, I was one of the ones at halftime in 2017 at the game going, Mayo are going to do this. There's no way they're going to lose it from here. And it wasn't that. It wasn't, we definitely didn't get that. Like, Mayo obviously gave it a right rattle, but you always just felt that inevitability about it from this Dublin team. But yeah, unbelievable experience, and you'd be a little bit concerned at the minute that the eeriness, how exhilarating it was, and the inevitability of it. They're all things that I'm not. You're just be unsure about where sport is at the minute in terms of games from here on out. And we none of us realised it at the time, but reported in the Irish Independent by Colm Keys this morning that Mayo's backroom team was slightly more enlarged than it should have been.
Yeah. We see this morning. I read this story and I immediately have images of Jose Mourinho being snuck in to a stadium in a laundry basket. I wonder, is this the same thing?
It's hard to know, isn't it? Like, I assume that they went down under the hug and stand on a bus. Is there somebody counting numbers? I don't know how that works out logistically. Are they probably maybe counting them coming off the bus? And I don't know, what do you do? Do you hold your three, what are described as members of the senior management backroom team? Do you hold them back on the bus? Is that the Jose Mourinho moment? And wait for the clipboard person to sort of dip off, and then suddenly you say, right, lads, in you come here. But yeah, it's funny that it's taken best part of 3 weeks for this actually to come to light.
Yeah, it's a tough one if you're a steward in Croke Park, and it could have been, I don't know who the extra members are, but it could have been somebody high profile. It could have been somebody that you recognise, and it's like, you're not going to let me in? Oh, is this more pro-Dublin bias against the poor Mayo crowd coming all the way up to Croke Park? Are you going to tell me I'm not going to come in? It's a hard thing to do if you're a steward, to tell them to go away because they haven't got a COVID form filled out. But I kind of want to believe the espionage side to all this, and it's Jose's style, which is incredible that actually happened in the first place. But just one thing before you move on the actual seeing those games in stadiums. The interesting thing is that, say if you're watching a game at home without the fake crowd noise, the commentator needs to do a really good job to kind of keep you engaged and to kind of, I guess, almost inform you sometimes of this is a really important moment. Not that you need it, but it helps. But being in a stadium, you don't have that, and you don't have the crowd to actually help you understand this is a big moment, this is a not so big moment, and you're kind of on your own. You got to figure everything out for yourself when you're in an empty stadium.
Are you suggesting that who was it that hit Lee Keegan? Johnny Cooper, was it? Should have been sent off. Is that where we're going with this? No, Mick Fitzsimons.
Oh, the Fitzsimons one. Well, that I would have been interested to hear what the sound was. No, I'm actually just talking about, like, I mean, the ups and downs of the game. I mean, sometimes a player could play on and put the ball in the back of the net, and you realise that because the stadium has gone quiet, it's not actually a legitimate goal. But you might have actually missed that. You might have actually missed the referee's whistle or whatever it is if you're on your own and you're like, oh, this is huge. Because it's just you. You're the only person who has to tell you whether or not this is a big moment or not. So just call me an idiot for just basically relying on everybody else to tell me what's happening in a game.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. And there is an element of that for sure. And there was a bit of that in the press box. And I don't mind saying I was sitting in the socially distant proximity of John O'Leary, the former Dublin goalkeeper and captain. And that was a good sounding board for me. Anytime that Dublin did something that wasn't quite right, I was hearing about it, and that in itself was an interesting experience. Paul O'Connell has been confirmed as the new Ireland Rugby forwards coach. An interesting development, somewhat out of left field.
Because of his CV not being fully packed at the moment. Like, I don't think it's... I'm not sure if it is left field, actually, to be honest. It's surprising, for sure, but I think if you look at all the candidates for a role to work with Ireland's forwards, would he not be near the top of that list? Because he has done some coaching. It's clearly where he wants to go. It's not punditry. It's coaching. That's the avenue he wants to go down. So I think if you knew that there was a vacancy there and you knew that they were going to be looking for somebody, I think Paul O'Connell would have been near the top of that list. You give the guy a chance in this role. What you don't do is give a guy a chance who's completely unqualified as in a head coach role. But I do think somebody has to start somewhere. You could make the case that maybe a bit more of an underage or a club CV could be required. But right now, I think there's been a couple of issues in Ireland's line-out. I think maybe they needed a little bit of a secret sauce in the dressing room as well to try and G them up a little bit. And Paul O'Connell would be perfect in all those departments. It would be very interesting to see what happens if this goes very well for him, because obviously Andy Farrell got promoted from within to get the Ireland head coach. Of course, Andy Farrell had a decade of coaching behind him, so we're not comparing like with like here. But what Andy Farrell doesn't have, that Paul O'Connell does have, is the status of an absolute and utter Irish legend. And I just wonder if we could see not only a fast tracking to a role within the Ireland camp, but if this goes very well, a fast tracking towards Ireland's head coach one day. I'm not talking anytime soon, but I do think if all of a sudden we see a big uptick from Ireland's forwards over the next couple of months, and if Andy Farrell departs the Ireland job in a couple of years' time, who's to say that Paul O'Connell won't be in the mix for that job? I think that there is a chance. It's a slight one, but there is a chance that he could become Ireland head coach next if Andy Farrell hangs around for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I can't largely disagree with too much of that, other than to say that I think that there is a bit of the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's about it. Like there is, in that he's getting the job at the strength of his playing career and what we perceive to know about him as a character, as opposed to his CV. Like if he was Joe Bloggs, having not, had the career that he's had in terms of a player, he wouldn't be getting that Ireland job now. I think that that's the thing that, and we'll talk to Alan Quinlan about it a bit later on, but he is effectively getting the gig on that basis. Now, I say that, and then you also listen to people like Bernie Jackman over the last little while, who's been saying that he's been chatting to some of his former Stad players when he was the forwards coach there, who rave about him. And you listen to Finian Wycherley, he was talking to Nathan on the show last night, who talks about, a guy who just wants to help you be the best person that you can be. And so I'm sure all of that feeds in. And also interesting that David Nucifora would say that they were trying to find a role for him as opposed to this being something that just popped up and then suddenly it was like, all right, these things might match. They were actively trying to get this guy involved. So we'll wait and see with interest.
Sorry, just to, I guess, for anybody else who's thinking that this was a choice from left field, so you look at your pack at the moment and you think to yourself, who's the most important player within that pack? And it's James Ryan. Like, he is the next Ireland captain. Once Johnny Sexton departs, James Ryan is surely the next Ireland captain. Who do you want in the Ireland coaching staff to be able to take this guy to the next level, to ensure that he maintains his high standards and goes on to, I guess, solidify his place as one of the best locks in the world? You want Paul O'Connell there. You want Paul O'Connell to be the James Ryan whisperer. That is the guy. He is the best placed person to do that, because when it comes to teaching him the intricacies of the game, I'm sure that he's learned a lot of it already, and I'm sure Paul O'Connell can teach him a little bit more. But in terms of actually moulding him into the Ireland captain that he's going to be, the leader that he's going to be, there's no better person that we've seen in recent times than Paul O'Connell who's able to do that. So I think on that level, and he's not going to be coaching everybody. He's a forwards coach. He's going to be focused mostly on the pack. He's a brilliant acquisition for that type of player, that James Ryan player.
Yeah. No, it will be fascinating, and like Paul O'Connell could turn out absolutely, like you say, to be the next Ireland head coach. You might see Ronan O'Gara involved there somewhere as well, and he could end up being one of the best Irish coaches of all time. So I'm definitely, I'm not going all in on, his CV isn't what you might like it to be at this stage or going into a job like that, but it isn't to say that he isn't going to knock it out the ballpark. So we shall watch and see. It is coming up on 7:45 on this Friday morning. We've plenty coming your way over the next couple of hours. You are watching OTB AM, and we're live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And here's a bit of a sense of what's coming up on the show ahead over the next little while. We're going to talk to Caoimhe O'Neill very shortly of The Athletic in relation to all things Liverpool. Such interesting times there. It does seem as if, and we'll ask Phil in a second, that Villa game in the FA Cup tonight does go ahead. So we'll get Caoimhe's thoughts on that and plenty more interesting bits and bobs around Liverpool as well at the minute. We'll let you know what's happening across the back pages of the newspapers just after 8. Eric Donovan is going to join us at about 8:15 or thereabouts, and what's been an unbelievably interesting 7 or 8 days for the Irish boxer. We'll get his thoughts, and I'm sure it'll be an interesting conversation with Eric coming your way a little bit later. Shane Hannon will be along to discuss many things, including the shake-up in the Monaghan backroom team. That will really be the only topic at hand. The main one when we talk to Shane a little bit later. Alan Quinlan, we'll talk to him about Paul O'Connell and what that means for this Irish rugby team, what success will mean for the Irish forwards coach as well, and also some interesting stuff from the fixtures this weekend too to talk to him about. A brand new feature coming your way at 9 o'clock, Sports Bingo. Eoin is going to mark a card for the weekend of everything you should expect to come, and then we're going to have Deal or No Deal in the company of Nathan Murphy at 9:10. So that is everything that's coming your way over the next little bit. We do want to get your thoughts as well. If you have any texts or comments to get into us, do lash them in and we'll bring them to our audience. So anything at all that tweaks your interest, whether it's events on the field or off it, or whatever you're having yourself, we'd love to hear from you. So text us or drop us a tweet or whatever it is, and we'll bring that to our audience this morning. Phil Egan, good morning to you.
How are you doing, Adrian?
Is the game going ahead tonight, or what's going on?
Yeah, well, as things stand, it goes ahead. That's the FA Cup third round tie between Aston Villa and Liverpool. Now, obviously, there's been a significant outbreak of COVID-19 at Villa, so they've been forced to close their training ground, and they're going to be forced to field a team mixed of under 23s and under 18s. And No involvement for Dean Smith, his coaching staff, or any of the first team. Mark Delaney is the under-23s manager of Villa, so he looks set to take charge. Bit of a role reversal here, lads, from what happened last season in the League Cup when Liverpool played Aston Villa in the quarter-finals. Liverpool went to Villa Park with a team of kids because Jurgen Klopp and the first team squad were over in Qatar at the Club World Cup, and they were playing a game 24 hours later. So Villa ended up winning that game 5-0. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of team Klopp puts out, but doesn't tend to go too strong in the FA Cup. Never been beyond the 5th round under Klopp, and you'd imagine with that United game next week as well, he'd be using tonight as a chance to rest some players, but then maybe he wants to bring some players into form. You think Salah hasn't scored for a few games. If you're playing against under 18s and under 23s, you could absolutely fill your boots. But yes, as things stand, the game does go ahead, but we should get more clarity on that later this morning. There is another FA Cup third round tie as well. Again, it's an all Premier League clash. Wolves at home to Crystal Palace, and both games due to get underway at 7:45. Leinster and Ulster will go head to head in the Guinness Pro 14 at the RDS tonight. Leinster looking to bounce back from their first defeat of the season at the hands of Connacht last week. Ulster still unbeaten. They're the only unbeaten team in the competition. Jordan Larmour starts for Leinster for the first time in 3 months. He's back from that shoulder injury. Johnny Sexton's also been cleared to play as well. So an interesting one. We see Ross Byrne at outside centre. No Jacob Stockdale for Ulster. He is injured. He picked up an injury in the win over Munster last week. That game at the RDS kicks off at 7:35. Some interesting lines coming out of the GAA this morning. 2 more counties are facing potential disciplinary action for breaching the collective training ban. Complaints were made to the GAA. Now, this follows the news that the Down panel got a visit from the PSNI at a gathering at Abbey CBS in Newry. Now, Down said the gathering of 18 players wasn't for training. It was actually an opportunity to outline what they would have to do over the next few weeks. And there's also footage of the Cork football squad doing fitness work on Youghal Beach, and the manager, Ronan McCarthy, insisted there was no breach of COVID-19 guidelines. It's believed the second county is from Leinster, and they have been contacted. And another interesting story on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. Mayo GAA have been called by Croke Park to explain the presence of 3 members of their backroom team who weren't accredited for the All-Ireland final against Dublin last month. And just finally for me, some golf news. American pair Justin Thomas and Harris English share the lead on 7 under par after round 1 of the Century Tournament of Champions in Hawaii. This is the tournament that Rory McIlroy is not playing in. Him and Tyrrell Hatton, 2 of the top 10, the only 2 of the top 10 that won't be involved this week. But world number 1 Dustin Johnson is 5 shots back on 2 under par.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? The dynamic of the Villa game, the potential Villa game tonight. Like, I mean, there's still a chance. I presume that they would cancel it. If it was a Premier League game, that would be the interesting thing, right? Like, I mean, if Villa weren't prepared necessarily to play, maybe they would just play their under-23s. But we might be facing a situation sometime soon where they might just have to give over the 3 points.
Yeah, like obviously with the Premier League, we've seen what happened recently with the Everton and Manchester City game. That game was just postponed, and then City were missing a few players, but didn't stop them from beating Chelsea or beating United in the League Cup. I think, no, if this was a Premier League game, it would just be postponed. There's no way Villa would just offer up the 3 points. And I think the Premier League would be a bit more accommodating. The problem is the calendar has been squeezed into a shorter space of time, meaning things like the FA Cup and the League Cup are, there's very little leeway, and this was always going to be an issue. Derby are the same. Southampton and Shrewsbury tomorrow, that game has been postponed. We don't know what's going to happen with that, whether Southampton just get a bye. But if the game was going ahead and there was no COVID in terms of the Villa squad, I think this was a game that Liverpool were going to struggle in, because Klopp is definitely going to rest players. The FA Cup always seems to just come around at a bad time for Liverpool in terms of they have just lost a game in the league, or I think back to last season when they got knocked out by Chelsea. They'd lost to Watford in the league, they'd lost to Atletico in the first leg of the Champions League, and they were always going to field a weakened team against Chelsea. Chelsea went a bit stronger and won. It wasn't really a surprise. 2 years ago, they'd lost to City at the Etihad Stadium, and that was a significant game. But then they get knocked out by Wolves because, once again, Klopp rests players. He's never really taken the competition too seriously. Think back to the Everton game last season, where you saw the lineups, you thought, right, this is the chance Everton have now to finally end their Merseyside derby hoodoo. And Curtis Jones comes up with a stunning winner, and then they obviously got through that one. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
We'll see what happens later on. Phil, good man. Thanks a million. Chat to you later. Thanks a lot, Phil Egan there. As always, on a Friday morning now, yesterday. And a reminder as well, by the way, you can check out this full piece up on the OTB Podcast Network or YouTube channel as well. But it was the first Thursday of 2021. And of course, that meant John Giles was back on Off the Ball. And here he is talking to Nathan about Trent Alexander-Arnold.
They're having more teams getting at them now at the back than they did before, obviously because Van Dijk and Gomez and these guys are not playing. And I've always felt that Trent Alexander is a very, very good player, Nathan, going forward, but he's not a good defender.
Yeah.
And any time you've seen, like when they played Spurs there a few weeks ago, the goal that Spurs scored from and the chance they had all came down that side. And again, he's defending against Southampton for the goal was very, very bad. I mean, he could have headed it away. He could have done anything way before Ings got through to score. Now, I think he's a terrific player. Going forward, he's a terrific player, but he's not a good defender. And he's a relatively young lad, I know, and he's done extremely well. But really, I think there's more... Liverpool have to do more defending now than they did with the top-class players, Gomez, and I know I'm repeating myself now, but I have to emphasise that. And Robertson, I think, is terrific. He's a terrific defender, terrific going forward. But if Liverpool look like losing the goal, it's going to be down that right-hand side.
Yes, John. In conversation with Nathan on the show last night, as you can check out that full piece on the OTB Podcast Network. Delighted to say that Caoimhe O'Neill of The Athletic joins us on the line. Good morning to you, Caoimhe.
Morning. You okay?
Flying, thanks. We've just been debating that whether the game tonight goes ahead and what it looks like and all that type of thing. What are you hearing?
My colleague Greg Evans at The Athletic sort of reported last night that Villa are likely to play the under-23 team tonight. So it does possibly look likely that it's going to be going ahead, but obviously Villa won't be playing the first team. It'll be a lot of sort of youth players that will be called up into the game, which is kind of similar to when Liverpool had to play that League Cup fixture when they were in Qatar last year for the Club World Cup. So it's kind of weird how the tables have turned a little bit here, but obviously, you know, it's very concerning for Villa as it is for, you know, football at the minute with coronavirus. The cases just seem to be increasing, and obviously after the Christmas period, now we've gone into another lockdown, and you know, it is a little bit starting to get a little bit worrying, isn't it? You know, Liverpool were set to travel down today anyway. They were always planning to travel down on the day of the game, and you know what's coming out of Liverpool is that they're, you know, happy to play the game, and that was always going to be you know, the plan to travel down. They weren't cancelling any plans, and then I think the FA are going to probably look at it today and see whether it's sort of reasonable for the game to go ahead. So I think we're sort of still waiting, but it does seem likely that if Villa do play, it won't be obviously with a full strength team, but we thought that Liverpool probably wouldn't be playing a full strength team anyway, with you know, a lot of players needing game time and a lot of players needing a rest.
And like Liverpool might reciprocate, Caoimhe, obviously, given that the injuries list that they have, a very big game on the horizon, and the knowledge that Villa are under strength. Possibility that Liverpool just reciprocate with playing a vastly under strength team.
Yeah, I mean, you always imagine Jurgen Klopp to play those on the periphery of a squad just for game time more so. And obviously, you know, it's been such a tricky period for Liverpool to navigate through this, you know, web of injuries. And, you know, with a lot of players coming back, I think Klopp will be looking to get them some minutes. You'd think that maybe he'll opt for some younger players. Maybe we'll see Nat Phillips and Reece Williams play together at centre-half. You know, two actual centre-backs playing the role would be interesting to see, wouldn't it? Especially after, obviously, defeat to Southampton, where there was just midfielders everywhere. So, yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting. The likes of Curtis Jones will probably get a game. We saw Shaqiri come on. Obviously Minamino, you know, players like this, Divock Origi, you'd expect to start the game. So I think, you know, Liverpool won't see this as an opportunity to sort of play a stronger team. I think Klopp was always going to play, you know, an understrength squad almost, but you know, it'll still be a strong side with a mix of youngsters.
That centre-back position is going to be quite interesting tonight to actually see Phillips and Williams played together in that team. Do you have a sense of who's ahead in the pecking order and what they need to do to actually get a starting berth against Manchester United?
I mean, I think it sort of set them both back, didn't it? Obviously not starting against Southampton. It kind of signalled maybe Klopp doesn't trust them as much, but obviously Southampton pressed so well. You know, that was on full display, wasn't it, on Monday? And I thought maybe their inexperience would have been costly, but it turns out, you know, Jordan Henderson probably, you know, was a cost for that first goal, wasn't he? Well, the only goal. So I feel like the decision to play Klopp was to play Henderson was quite interesting by Klopp, because then it kind of made you think, well, does he trust Williams and Phillips enough? And I honestly do think he does. It was just that particular game when he knew Southampton were going to be pressing from the front that he thought it best maybe to opt for Henderson, who's more experienced, obviously not a centre half, but, you know, as Liverpool's captain. In terms of...
Sorry, go ahead.
In terms of pecking order between Rhys Williams and Phillips, you'd probably suggest Phillips has more experience. He was out on loan last season and won promotion to the Bundesliga, I think. And obviously Rhys Williams was on loan at Kidderminster. So they've both been out there in the real world and got a real taste of football before, obviously, the pandemic. And Rhys Williams is a little bit older, a bit younger than Phillips. So, you know, there's still a little bit of his development to go, but I think they're both players Klopp has turned to in recent weeks and have put in amazing performances. So, you know, wouldn't doubt that he'll give them a chance tonight. Maybe I think with obviously Diogo Jota getting injured in that sort of dead rubber against Midtjylland, Klopp won't want to risk any other players. Because obviously, you know, Jota, what a phenomenal start he had to Liverpool season, and then getting injured in a game that didn't really matter was, you know, has proved costly to Liverpool on the goal front, because they've suffered scoring, haven't they? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the lineup tonight. But I think, you know, both Williams and Phillips have impressed Klopp in what they've done, and they'll have to, won't they? Because it doesn't, the talk coming out is sort of that Liverpool won't be signing a new centre half this month.
So they're not going to dip into the market then, and they're going to wait until the summer to make a move in that department?
Well, Klopp said himself yesterday it's not likely that Liverpool will, make a move for a centre half. He said that he's not ruling it out, but, you know, at this moment in time, it doesn't look likely. And, you know, we've been hearing that for a while now, and, you know, I think that annoys fans, doesn't it? Because they think, well, if you've got a problem, just fix it. But at the same time, obviously, there's a lot of financial situations going on for a lot of clubs now. Obviously, in COVID times, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think, you've seen Arsenal take out a loan yesterday. You know, clubs are probably going to be struggling financially moving forward because of, obviously, the match day hit has been taken away from them. And obviously, other teams are less likely to be wanting to buy players this month. As you know, the summer sort of carried on as normal, didn't it, almost? But I feel like now we're seeing almost like the hit of COVID, and how it's affected football, which it'll probably, it's been a quiet month already in the window, and it'll probably continue to be that way. Even in terms of outgoing to Liverpool, you probably won't see anyone leave, and you probably, as Klopp said, it probably won't be likely that they'll sign anyone.
It's a tricky one as well, because they have a situation where if everybody's fully fit, the defender they would need to sign would have to be pretty extraordinary to actually start at centre-back for Liverpool. So it would be a 6-month deal, really, if they were to get somebody in, assuming everybody comes back to full fitness come the summertime. Just on what's actually happened this week then, in the aftermath of the time Liverpool have last played, it kind of felt like the build-up to Manchester United against Manchester City was the build-up to Manchester United against Liverpool. You had Solskjaer hitting back at what Klopp was saying on Monday night about the amount of penalties that United have got over the last few years. And I kind of felt that he had a little bit of a jab at Liverpool as a club, kind of talked about facts in his press conference as if to compare Jurgen Klopp to Rafa Benitez. Was Jurgen Klopp Benitez-esque in his comments on Monday night?
No, I think anything Klopp says is always going to make a headline, isn't it? Like any, manager of the league. And obviously after a defeat, it was only going to, further that. I think he sort of just said what is frustrating fans at the minute. He probably can feel that, they're they are aware of social media, I think, and it's just like a feeling at the minute that obviously United, I mean, among all fans, I think a lot of people think they do win a hell of a lot of penalties, and I think Liverpool have had 5 themselves this season, is it? And United have had 6, so they're not far behind in terms of winning penalties. But I think that it's probably got to Klopp and his team thinking that sometimes it just feels like there was a moment against Newcastle where the goalkeeper grabs Mane's leg, and then obviously on Monday there was a moment where Mane's brought down, and there was actual contact there. But obviously it's just sort of one of them at the minute. Liverpool aren't scoring goals from open play, and kind of feel like a penalty would be helpful at this moment in time. But look, I think Klopp's comments are just Klopp, isn't it? After the game, he's always gonna, I think he's blamed stuff on the weather before, and people have just taken it and ran with it. It's like he says sort of a throwaway line, and it becomes this big thing. I don't think he's necessarily just sitting at home thinking about United and penalties all the time. I just think it was a sort of throwaway line and sort of just hinting at what everyone's feeling at the minute. Probably the club and the fans. If Liverpool could win some more penalties, that would be great, wouldn't it? But I think the main concern for Liverpool would be not United's penalty record, but their own scoring record, and how much they just need to improve on that attack. Because since Jota, his injury, it just seems to have gone really flat. And you'd expect them players like Salah, Mane, and Firmino to be scoring a lot of goals a game, particularly after that Crystal Palace game, which obviously followed the late win against Spurs. Liverpool fans felt that this was sort of Liverpool coming into a really good period, and then it just, I think they've scored 1 goal since then, and they've dropped 7 points, and it's been quite pitiful at times and excruciating to watch for fans. But this is an incredible team who are missing a lot of incredible players, and I think fans know that it will improve soon enough, and I mean it has to, doesn't it? Because obviously Manchester City now are just looking smoking hot again.
Yeah, is there a sense just on that point that Klopp is volatile is not the word I'm looking for, but in that way, and we had Daniel Harris on during the week, and he was talking about the fact that Klopp, in his opinion, isn't Ferguson in the terms of the tone of what he's saying, or the timing, maybe more importantly, of what he's saying in a title race, but that like Klopp, and we've seen it obviously recently enough with the Roy Keane comments on Sky when he comes on and he's saying, actually it was interesting to hear Jordan Henderson talk about them after the Southampton game as being sloppy, given that was the word that Roy Keane had used at some point previously. But that he is a little bit get-atable in that way, Caoimhe.
I think it's always interesting after a defeat. I think we saw the interview with Klopp, was it after the Merseyside derby, and he was less than happy, obviously because the game ended in such dramatic fashion, and Liverpool were denied what possibly should have been a winning goal late at the end. And there've been moments, haven't there, I think, after tough games. I think it's just sort of a letting off of pressure almost. I mean, he's got one of the biggest jobs in football, and I think sometimes, he will speak his mind straight away, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think sometimes he probably forgets how it maybe will be, interpreted, and a lot of the time, people take what he says and run with it. I don't think you can get at him in terms of his mentality. Liverpool are going through a bit of a weak spot at the minute, and that might be coming across even in post-match interviews from the captain and Klopp himself. But I don't think it's something that is a weakness almost. I think him saying it is probably important, because then maybe does it sort of become this sort of thing now? People will think more of it. I'm not too sure. I thought Andre Mariner had a really poor performance. The referee, it was for the Southampton game. Sometimes you've just got to say things how they are, and in the hope that they will change. So, for him to talk about penalties, I think it's just in the hope that Liverpool, maybe will going forward get some more. And Yeah, I think, it is just a dip at the minute for the club itself. It's not anything massively to do with Klopp or whatever. I think they're working on these things, and I think they've shown that the mentality they've had in the past, 18 months to 2 years is that it's one of real strength. So I think they'll pick that up sooner or later. It's just been a bit of a tough time, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and the interesting game obviously on the horizon that we might talk to you about at some point sooner to it as well. I did think that Klopp in my mind, heard Henderson use the word sloppy and cringed a bit, but we'll might come back to that again. You did write, Queeve, we wanted to ask you about, you wrote a very thoughtful piece on The Athletic this week about the abuse directed at Karen Carney last month. A very thoughtful piece that you'd obviously put a lot of time into crafting and thinking about how you would craft it. I wondered if you almost had a fatigue at almost having to still write those sort of pieces.
To be honest, I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to write it because I knew straight away that it would open me up to sort of a similar. No, I mean, she got a lot of abuse, and it was like really horrible to see. And I knew that sort of, standing up for it, which is obviously what I want to do because I'm a woman in football, and I feel like any abuse that any female pundit or player or anyone involved in the game suffers is wrong, isn't it? So I really wanted to write it, but at the same time I didn't know what to write because I was almost afraid that I would suffer some abuse, and I did get some on the back of it, and that's not right. But I feel like that's not the issue here. I kind of wanted to make the point that women are in football, whether anyone likes it or not. And I just feel like, I just wish we were just, there wasn't a conversation almost, and we could just like move forward and not be sort of questioned in a different kind of way. I just sort of want that equal playing field almost, and for it to be not a conversation, and for when a woman says something that people don't agree with, and that's absolutely fair. We're pundits are there to have their opinion, and they don't always have to be agreed with. But for when you disagree with a female pundit, you don't have to be sexist or misogynist in your your disagreement with them, because it borders on the line of really unacceptable behaviour. And I felt like I needed to write something just to sort of stick my head out a little bit and say this is how it feels, and it's not always nice. And sometimes I find myself watching my own opinion on social media, just because if I write something, sometimes you can be targeted a little bit more. I don't know, because people think that they've got more of a right to tell you their opinion or whatever. And I love people's opinions, and I just wish that like sometimes like that opinion in particular in that piece, it did draw a lot of heat towards me, and it was an interesting experience to go through, just to get a sliver of the taste of probably what Karen Carney had received that made her come off Twitter. It's really unacceptable behaviour. And I think what the point that I made in the piece is that we just it's not like about us being women or anything. We just kind of want to be accepted that we absolutely love football. We're here because this is our passion, and nothing else. And when it comes down to abuse, I mean, in any discrimination's wrong. And I just think it was hard for me to write it, but I just kind of wanted to be someone who said this is wrong, and to stick up for it, because I didn't want to stick my head up. But then I thought, this is something that I'm really passionate about, and maybe it'll give other women and other people strength. And a lot of people did message me to say, oh, I didn't really think of it like that and stuff. So I think more people took something from it, and more people were angered by it, so that was good. But yeah, we keep moving forward.
Well done on writing the piece, and written for the right reasons, and a very good read, and recommend that people go and check it out. And it's so disheartening to hear, not the slightest bit surprising, I have to say, and maybe that's the grim aspect of all of this, that you received abuse yourself off the back of it. And I don't know, we try to understand the root of where abuse like that is coming from, and it's not just a social media thing. Obviously, it's those tweets or those whatever have to be written by somebody, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know how to, what the solution is, or how to progress the conversation to the point that you can engage the type of people that are going to respond like that.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to not comment back to anything negative just because, I mean, I don't think it ever helps, does it? So I'll only really, interact with people who are positive, and sometimes I will interact with people to debate things, and that's part of why we like social media, because we can speak to people all over the world and debate things. But obviously, when you receive abuse, it does make you feel not very good about yourself. You can read a comment online, and this is just not me. This is anyone, and I think a point I'd probably like to make is just think before you tweet, isn't it? There are people on the other end there, and that's probably why I don't reply to people, because I don't want to berate anyone for anything, even if they've been less nice to me. I just think there's a lot going on in the world right now, and I don't think we need to be nasty to each other online, do we? Definitely got to be a bit more positive, I think, and just kind of think the sort of damaging effect I think social media can have. Like sometimes, like you'll read a comment, like I'll read a comment, and it'll just really it'll stress me out for a few hours, or I'll just be really down in the dumps off it. And I think for anyone to make you feel that way that you don't know is pretty crazy, isn't it? But
bonkers.
That's the effect of social media, and that'll be for a lot of people. From footballers to just anyone online. It can make you not feel good about yourself, and that's never a good thing.
Yeah, it's bonkers and it's not right. And well done for standing up to it. And think before you tweet is probably a good message to get behind. Caoimhe, thanks a million.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Cheers, thanks a lot. Caoimhe O'Neill of The Athletic there, joining us to talk all things Liverpool and beyond, as you've been hearing as well. Now, lots to still to come on the show. We're going to be talking to Eric Donovan very shortly, get his thoughts on a pretty interesting week 10 days for him, and the sports pages as well on the way after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Saturday panel on OTB.
I've watched a few of The Last Dance, mostly sports. I just find it fascinating. He's never satisfied with what he did, and I think anybody watching it, young kids watching it, whatever sports they're in, to see the attitude that he had and his approach to his profession was absolutely brilliant.
Don't miss the panel every Saturday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Follow the leader, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, the world's best-selling plug-in hybrid, is now available with 0% finance and a free home charge point worth €800. Leading the charge in plug-in hybrid technology, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. Book a test drive at your local dealer today. Mitsubishi, drive your ambition. Terms and conditions apply. See mitsubishimotors.ie. Lending criteria applies. This is a hire purchase agreement provided by Bank of Ireland Finance.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Now it's 13 minutes past 8 on OTB AM, and we've lots still to come. Alan Quinlan coming up a little bit later on to talk all things rugby. Nathan Murphy will be here, Sheahan, and we've Eric Donovan coming up in just a couple of moments' time. And a bit of a flavour, first of all, of what's going to on across the back pages, including on OTBSports.com. This morning we've our lead story there about Gary Neville, and as you can see on your screen as well, Finney Wycherley in conversation with Nathan on the show last night, and Gary Neville has hit out this morning at the FA, as he calls them, hypocritical for their comments in relation to the Edison Cavani ban. So more details on that up there, and Sean Dyche, more on Paul O'Connell as well, and plenty more besides as well. That's up on OTBSports.com. In the newspapers this morning, in the Irish Examiner, it's very much dominated by Paul O'Connell, a photograph of Paul O'Connell pretty much putting the fear of God into whoever it is he's pointing and roaring at. Inspirational O'Connell adds new dimension to Irish ticket rights. Simon Lewis there, some previews as well ahead of the weekend's interprovincial rugby action. In the Irish Times, motivated Leinster primed to put the record straight. A strong Leinster team named to take on Ulster at the RDS tonight. O'Connell's addition to Ireland coaching ticket, a punt worth taking by Farrell, says Jerry Thornley as well. Elsewhere for you on the newspapers this morning, we have the Daily Telegraph with an in-depth interview with Wilfred Zaha inside, and Villa to play kids as COVID fears grows, the main story there. In the Telegraph, The Guardian, the victims' trolling of Karen Carney was grim, vicious trolling of Karen Carney, I should say, was grim and avoidable. says the Kick It Out chairman, and more on that inside as well. That Arsenal loan that Caoimhe mentioned a bit earlier on, 120 million quid from the Bank of England to cover their losses, and more on that Villa game potentially tonight as well. Cup in the air, says the Irish Daily Star. Paul back to be a success, writes Derek Foley, and Klopp's rallying cop cry ahead of that game tonight. Tragic of the Cup, as everybody looks ahead to that game tonight, or maybe not game. We'll see how that goes on. That's the Sun, the Mirror Cup in chaos. While Dyche, good for hospitals if players get the jab. Sean Dyche very much calling on the UK government to dish out the jab to Premier League footballers. Brilliant photograph in the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. It's Snow Patrol on the Curragh, and it's horses cheek by jowl with sheep having their run out there, a winter scene. Horses from Willie McCreary's yard making the way past sheep yesterday out in the Curragh. Brendan pleads for sense amid breach worries. This was some of the stuff we touched on at the top of the show. Former GA President Nicky Brennan asking for counties to be mindful of COVID regulations as play and training potentially swings back into action. O'Connell backed to excel in Euro. That's the mail for you this morning, and plenty more as well. Besides, across the back pages, and I'll bring you a bit more of those a little bit later in the show, but it's gone at 8:15 on this Friday morning, and I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Eric Donovan. Morning to you, Eric.
Good morning. How are you, Adrian?
Flying, thank you. Thanks a million for joining us. Announced this week as the Health and Wellbeing Ambassador for Bearing Point, who've long been a sponsor of you in and out of the ring now, it turns out as well. What we must ask, first of all, exactly is a Health and Wellbeing Ambassador?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say I'm delighted to be appointed the Health and Wellbeing Brand Ambassador for Bearing Point. And I mean, to have a company the size of Bearing Point and with the strength of Bearing Point kind of in my corner, it definitely boosts the strength and power that I have in my corner, and I need that in this game. Professional boxing is a tough game, but we kind of linked up together at the beginning of 2020 with the first lockdown, and most of the Bearing Point, well, nearly all employees and staff were working from home and trying to get used to the new normal. And Bearing Point being a very they genuinely care about well-being and health, and they wanted to look after their staff and their employees from home. And Eric Conway, one of the head guys from the company, got in touch with me and asked if I'd be interested in doing some online workouts with the clients to kind of lift morale and keep, give them an outlet and provide some kind of healthy options for them while they're working from home. And so we kind of got stuck into that in the first lockdown, and we were doing two sessions a week, and they were a great success. And not only for the Irish firm, but then the European their European colleagues were joining in as well, and it was a great kind of virtual class that we kind of established. And as I said, it was a great success. And then during the year, I was doing a lot of community events, and Bearing Point became aware of the mental health work that I've been doing, and guest speaking and my online mental health workshops and seminars, and they really were attracted to that, and they wanted to be involved, and they realized that we shared a lot in common, a lot of the same principles and values. And when I got this fight on Sky Sports, Bearing Point rallied in behind me and got in behind some of the other long-term sponsors that I had as well, and they've added strength to my corner. And the Sky Sports fight obviously didn't go my way, unfortunately, but I think we did a good job in terms of representing myself and my sponsors and put in a good performance. And at the end of 2020, Bearing Point asked if I would like to be involved in a more kind of a more ambassador role, to provide maybe some of my seminars to their staff and some more sessions, online sessions, and maybe turn up at some of their CSR events as well. And I said I'd be absolutely delighted. So that's where we're at, and that was the announcement yesterday.
We might talk about that fight in just a moment, but in terms of that role that you're carrying out from now, and you've also spoken to a lot of people, and you've been on the show during the first couple of lockdowns over the last 10 months or so. Have you found a difference in how the public are dealing with lockdowns in terms of how in tune they are with their own mental health as the lockdowns have come and gone and we've gone in and out of them?
Yeah, it's a difficult time for a lot of people, Eoin, and I think Bearing Point are very aware of that as well. You know, it's like people trying to get used to, you know, living in their house, but also working in their house, doing everything from the same room. Some people may not even have the luxury of a garden. Some people could be in apartment blocks or whatever. And Bearing Point are always trying to, you know, kind of improve people's lives, improve people's working lives, and not only through the boxercise and fitness that I do, but they also have other options like Zumba and yoga, and they even have online concerts and bingo, and you know, they're always trying to encourage the employees and the colleagues to come together to try and enjoy life in a virtual kind of sense, and you know, kind of keep an interest, you know, and lift morale. But I notice a big change across society. Definitely, mental health is a huge issue at the moment. I take phone calls a lot, you know, nearly every week. I take phone calls with people who, you know, be mutual friend of a mutual friend, or just somebody just got my number and they're just asking for a bit of assistance for a son, for a daughter, for, you know, for a cousin and relative, whatever it is. And, you know, they might just ask me for a bit of advice, or would I speak to one of their family members. And I always offer my services, I always do. And, you know, I don't claim to be any sort of guru or anything like that, but I just listen. I just listen and gives, you know, offer people some compassion and empathy, and I try and point them in the right direction. Then I try and say, look, well, this is what I did, you know, when I was struggling, or maybe, you know, this is what you could do. You know, it might work for you, it might not, but you know, if you need another chat, I'm here later on or tomorrow or whatever. And you know what, I do that because that was done for me when I needed support and help, and it's good. It's good. We make a livelihood out of what we get. We make a life out of what we give.
That's really interesting to hear you talk about that, Eric. Like, I think your outlook and the way you've been, I think maybe over the last 12 months, and I know we've spoken to you a few times, and anybody who's been following you online will be very familiar with it as well. I think it's the reason that a brand like that will come to work with you, I'm sure. Can I just ask you, in terms of the people that are been in contact with you, and like it was really interesting to hear you say that you're just listening, and I think that maybe if we've taken anything from the last 12 months, that's a really important thing. But then you mentioned about you might try and give them a bit of advice or guidance. Does that tend to be very much tailored to the person you're speaking to, or do you find that there's a couple of things that, even in terms of our own audience this morning, that you can bits of wisdom that you can impart?
Yeah, I mean, listening is a skill in itself, and I remember the first time when I started doing some counselling sessions on my own journey, and there was something really special about that. Just having that, it was very liberating. Just having somebody, you know, give you this empathy and compassion, and just hear you, really, really hear you and listen. And you're not looking for answers at that time. You're just looking to get a lot of things off your chest or out of your head. And somebody is sitting down and actually just listening to you. And I often say to kids when I go to schools as well, like, to your friends or whatever, you know, sometimes if a friend of yours hears something that's very maybe heavy or personal or whatever, you don't have to have the answers. You just have to say to your friend, I hear you, I'm in your corner, and I'm with you. You know, I don't know what to do on this, with this news, with this information, but just know this, that I'm still your friend, and, you know, I'm in your corner and I'm with you. And because I say that to some people, because we get a little bit, as a society, when people talk about depression or loneliness or anxiety and stuff like that, we can get a little bit, what would you say, a little bit confused in how to deal with that stuff, and we might try to change the subject really quickly, or we might try to you know, just kind of avoid those situations and avoid those scenarios. But I do say it's a privilege. I think it's a privilege that people would ring me up and they don't even know me and just want to have a talk to me. And they might say, Eric, I've heard you on Off the Ball. I've heard you on, various news channels or programs, social media channels, whatever. And, you shared my story. You're telling my story and stuff like that. And because it's not unusual. My story is not an unusual story. It's quite common, and there's a lot of people out there struggling at the moment, and a lot of people have lost jobs, and a lot of people are still in jobs, but they're in isolated environments, and they need connection. That's all it is. They need connection and they need direction. And like as I said, I've made so many mistakes in the past, so I don't claim to have all the answers. But I think sometimes when you can listen to someone, that's more than enough.
Yeah, there's a power in you empowering people themselves to do that, and I hope that people got something from that this morning. It's been an unbelievable sort of week or 10 days for you as well, isn't it? It's been a mad time when maybe you might have been expecting to be a bit quiet. You've been confirmed, if people aren't aware, I'm sure most are, the mandatory challenger for the Super Feather EU title and to take on Hiatum Lemuz. How did they decide that that's the route they're going? How did that all come about?
Well, I stepped up to fight Selfa Barrett at super featherweight, and then after that I wasn't interested. I was planning on going back to featherweight, but I wasn't interested in going back to featherweight too quickly, because you kind of only make the featherweight kind of category when you have a championship fight. So I had a fight just before Christmas in Belgium, and that was kind of a super featherweight as well. So my last two fights were at super featherweight, which is about 4 pounds heavier than featherweight, which was my planned destination. And sure enough, on the last day of 2020, the Boxing Union of Ireland get in touch with me and say, Eric, we're delighted to inform you that you are now the official mandatory challenger for the super featherweight EU title. And I was like, oh, well, I was heading back to featherweight, but they probably ranked me as super featherweight because my last two fights were there. Now, I obviously didn't say that to the BOI. I was just thinking this in my head, but I was like, hold on, maybe I don't need to go back right now. This is like, let's have a look at this guy. And I went and I'd never heard of him before. He's a Maltese boxer, 17 wins and 1 defeat. And he did, I think he had most of his earlier part of his career in Australia. And he beat the Italian in Italy to win that belt. And I was just like, something, like, I'm in a position now, mandatory challenger. I've never been the mandatory challenger for anything in my life. And that means I'm, my next fight is, technically going to be for the European title, whether it's against him. Well, he has to defend it against me, and if he doesn't defend, he has to vacate. So I'm like, that's my next shot. It's a great position to be in. The current climate is awful, though. You know what I mean, with everything up in the air, and we just do not know exactly when or where. But it's a very good position to be in, and I think I'll stick around to go for that, and then maybe possibly look at going back to feather afterwards. We'll see.
Does that uncertainty mean that, like, you can't even, like, do your camps get in touch now, or, like, with the uncertainty, does that mean that, like, because the obvious questions are that people have, the when, the where, is it Sky, is it RTE? I'm assuming by the sounds of things you've no answers to any of those things.
No, not really. I was speaking to Mark last night, so Mark's my manager, and he was just saying that, like, he's in touch with the EBU at the moment, and so the EBU are going to link up my team, my manager, and my Lemuz's team. So they'll actually try and come to some sort of an agreement. I can't see it being in Ireland at the moment. I can't see the European title fight being in Ireland, because to have a fight like that in Ireland, you would definitely need to be putting bums on seats, and we just can't do that at the moment. So it could play out somewhere in Europe behind closed doors, or it could play out in, what would be ideal would be great if it was on maybe a matchroom card or something, undercard of that or something like that, because Eddie did say he'd have me back on as well, so I'm going to hold him to that, But I tell you what would be amazing.
Was that like, what's your sense of that, Eric? Like, because I think anybody watching that night had a feeling that was the right thing to do at that time, but it can be like, we've all had a few drinks and we've said things that.
Yeah, well, I have it in black. I have it in black and white, so I tell you, I'll be holding him to it. No, I know. I think he's an honor.
Did you chase him up for an email, or what was? Did you...
Nah, he sent me a message when I got back home, and he's been in touch, like, you know what I mean? And he's been in touch since I got home, and he just said, like, hats off to Eric, you added to the whole show, and it was great to work with you and Mark, and look forward to working with you in the future. We'll definitely have you back. And I was like, that's fantastic. And but an ideal scenario would be to go away and win that European title, and come back later on, and maybe even the second half of the year, and can you imagine fans being allowed to come back and having a big homecoming defence or something like that, with the first defence of that title? It's a great position to be in. I'm excited. I'm really, really excited about it all, and even more so having Bearing Point in my corner, because that adds a lot of strength to it as well.
It's interesting when you listen to Eddie Hearn speak after that defeat last summer. He rarely picks up on somebody who's after losing a fight and gives them so much credit. He usually focuses just on the winner, I think. That wasn't the case for you. What was it about the build-up to that camp, the relationship that you built up with him at that point, that I guess he thought so much of you so quickly?
Yeah, it was kind of weird, and I often say this to people, like, everybody was going around fight camp saying, Eric Donovan, what a talker. They were kind of repeating what Eddie Hearn was saying, and I was like, I'm out here to box, to become the top 15 in the world, and people are talking about what a talker Eric Donovan is. I'm like, I really wish they would say what a boxer he is, but honestly, that was my first time to get a taste of the big time, really, in professional boxing. And the 12 fights I had before that was the hard grafting, almost like apprenticeship, of just selling tickets, traveling around, the donkey work, really. But like, it has to be done. And that time with the fight camp, even though it was in the middle of a pandemic in Eddie Hearn's backyard, which is not your typical backyard, it was quite spectacular. And just to have the whole luxury of not having to sell tickets, everything done for you, your flights, your hotel, everything arranged, and the professionalism, and it was incredible. So I really enjoyed that. I took to that like a duck to water. Like, that was where I kind of felt like, yeah, I deserve this. I'm a professional athlete. I've been working so hard for so long. This is, we're going in the right direction, and they're running a really good ship over there. It's amazing. And when he said to me he'll have me back, I genuinely believe he will.
Yeah, it did feel like that on the night as well. Go on, sorry.
Adrian, just on that point of everybody kind of complimenting you on being a good talker, like, I guess so many boxers have to work really hard at that. Obviously, everybody's working unbelievably hard at their craft of the sports person that they are, but some people need to be a little bit contrived in what they're saying, or they need to be OGT a little bit. It must be a little bit of comfort knowing that actually my natural personality is working. It's actually selling myself very, very well. I don't need to be fake. I don't need to not be the person that I already am.
Yeah, and that all comes with, confidence, self-esteem. I would have, as a young kid, when I was out there, when I was dealing with like my own issues and stuff like that, I there was times where I used to describe myself as a huge, massive ego, low self-esteem, but it's kind of like square peg in a round hole. But no, my journey through life has allowed me to kind of accept who I am, to be myself truly and fully, and whether people like that or not is really none of my business, because I have to be just true to myself. And if people do like it, then that's great, and if they don't, well, there's not much I can do about it. I can't change for everybody, and growing up years ago, that's the kind of person I was whoever people wanted me to be. I was looking for direction off other people, trying to find out how to fit in, what kind of a person to be, how do I, looking for acknowledgement and acceptance. But like, the only acceptance I need is the acceptance from myself, to be happy in my own skin. And the more I've grown into that, the more people have responded to that in a very positive and encouraging way. And I was like, why didn't I do this long ago? It's kind of like, but look, you can't put an old head on young shoulders, your journey through life. But no, on that, the simple answer is, just be happy in your own skin, be you, be the best you can be. And people like that. People respond to that because there's no BS and there's no ego and bravado or whatever, even though I'm a professional boxer, some people look at me and they want me to kind of like, come on, call me mother names, you know what I mean? Come on, face to face, but I'm not, I'm just straight up and, what you see is what you get.
On the fighting bit then, are you working on special parts of your craft at the moment? Has there been a particular focus going into this year where you're like, I need to get better at this part of my game?
Yeah, I think I needed a bit more, like coming off the Self-Bar fight, there's a couple of things. Number one is the strength. I needed to really focus on my strength because I wasn't on a proper strength program. I was doing some kind of strength circuits and that, but that's only kind of conditioning work. It's not proper strength. You need to have full isolated strength training sessions with a strength and conditioning coach. So I brought in Seamus Power, who is a strength and conditioning coach from Wexford. He's brilliant, and we've been making great progress there. I also brought in a head coach with professional experience, which is Packy Collins, and so Packy's added to the team, and Kenneth Egan is obviously still there as well. So I feel like the next time I'm in a position like that I will be prepared to a much higher level than previously, and hopefully this time I'll be able to see over get over the line and see out the fight with a victory.
Does that maturity that you spoke about earlier on, does that also come with like more openness to changing your own approach or your style, or like whereas a younger fighter you might have been more bullheaded that like this is my route and this is my path and this is the type of boxer I am and I ain't changing it, that maybe you're a bit more open to that now?
Oh yeah, definitely open to it, Adrian. It's like even going back to last year, I was getting very frustrated. The end of 2019, I was getting, the early stages of 2020, I was getting very frustrated with my career. I didn't feel like I was going anywhere. I was running to stand still, and I didn't really see the breaks that I hoped to see. And I made a change. I had to change my managerial kind of. I had to change managers really. I was managed by Leonard Gunning from Boxing Ireland Promotions, and they do a great job, and I can't thank them enough for the start that they've given me. But I just felt like I needed somebody to take me to that next level, and I didn't have the luxury of having 10 years ahead of me. I had to be ruthless, I had to be selfish, and it's not kind of traits that I like. But when you're a professional athlete, professional sports person, you have to make tough decisions. It's not personal. It's just tough decisions that have to be made. And if I don't make them, then I'm going to end up with regrets. And that's why I came back boxing in the first place, because I had some regrets and I wanted to iron them out. And I said, if I don't make this decision, I'm going to still end up with regrets. The one thing I came back to change. So I had to change managers, and thankfully, we hit the ground running with Mark. Our first fight was on Sky Sports, and Mark has great contacts. He's a brilliant manager, and I love working with him. And now I've brought in a head coach in Packy. Packy's over 20 years of professional boxing. I'm learning loads under his tutelage now, and strength and conditioning coach as well. But these are all, like, I have the blinkers on. I have to make decisions that are based on my career, that are based on getting me to the point that where I want to get to. And that when I do hang up the gloves, which I hope is not anytime soon, but when I do hang them up, I want to be able to say, yes, I'm very content and happy with what I do. Yeah,
well, you're headed in the right direction. And I note that if it happens to be Lemieux, that his one loss was against a 5'8" southpaw named Ireland. I think like the omens are all there.
That's right, yeah. Noticed that, yeah. So, please God, the stars will align for me and get me over the line the next time. And it's always been a dream of mine to become a European champion. And, I know I'm probably coming across quite reserved, but I am absolutely buzzing for this. Like, this was like the last day. Can you imagine the final day on 2020? You're getting this news. Like, 2020 was a horrible year. Me and Laura were supposed to get married. It promised so much, and just, we got through it. We all got through it, and sometimes it feels like we're not even through it, because 2021 isn't really starting off much better. But I do believe our best days are ahead of us, and I do believe that we will get out the other side of this. But what news to get on the final year of 2020. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's been a great week or 10 days for you. Eric, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Always great insight and an interesting person to speak with, and very honest as well, and forthright. So keep that up and keep up the good stuff, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Eric Donovan on the line there, just announced as a health and wellbeing ambassador for Bearing Point, and you can check out Eric's social channels for much more on that. And as he said himself, there's plenty of good stuff going on up there in terms of Zoom sessions and other stuff as well. So keep an eye out up for all of that. It is 20 to 9 on this Friday morning, and we're delighted to have you with us. We have lots of good stuff coming up. We're going to talk to Alan Quinlan shortly about all the latest in the world of rugby, including the appointment of Paul O'Connell to the Irish rugby team, more as well besides. So keep your comments coming into us. I want to let you know as well that you can listen to the OTB Sports Radio app all day long on OTB Sports Radio, indeed, on the website otbsportsradio.com /radio is the best place, as always, in the OTB Sports app as well. You can download that if you don't already have it. From 1 o'clock, we're going to speak with, it's OTB Gold, as it is every day at 1. Catherine Switzer is coming your way today. 1:30, the Paddy Power half hour is back, and it's live in Enniskall. And Ger are going to preview a weekend of FA Cup in the company of Emmett from Paddy Power. 3 o'clock today is Friday night racing. Johnny and Ger will be coming your way for that. 3 o'clock, League of Ireland legend Eoin Heary is the subject of today's Team 33 League of Ireland legend, and a little bit more sprinkling of OTB Gold coming your way at 6 with Ronnie Delaney. And then Off the Ball live from 7 tonight, Melissa Reddy will be on to hopefully preview that Villa versus Liverpool game that we kind of think is going ahead. John Gonzalez is going to talk about the NFL wildcard weekend, Friday night racing with the jockey Jonathan Moore, who had his first Grade 1 winner at Leopardstown over Christmas as well. So that's all coming your way a little bit later. And then 9 tonight, Team 33 live. Alan Moore, former League of Ireland footballer, a little bit of a stint in England, I think, as well, maybe Burnley. He's going to join Enniskall to talk about plenty of things, including Russian football. So that is coming your way a little bit later on. And it is, as I said, 20 to 9 on this Friday morning. We've lots of comments coming in. We'll get those your way in just a few minutes' time. But Shane Hannon, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are things?
Things are good. How are you keeping? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to yourselves. Yeah, 8th of January. We're still there, still in the single digits, Adrian. So it's okay to say it, I guess. We've
been properly chatting, Shane. So I'm all at home with that. A couple of things to talk to you about. But first of all, is there any latest news on Villa v Liverpool or what's going on?
Yeah, well, I guess at the moment, 20 to 9 in the morning, as you mentioned, things still going ahead. Who knows how that will change across today? But as Caoimhe O'Neill and Phil Egan mentioned earlier on, Villa are going to have to play their under 23s or youth team in this match because of the coronavirus outbreak at their training ground. So that final decision is due to be made later today. So we'll obviously have the latest on that on the OTB Sports app and otbsports.com as the day progresses. So as I've mentioned, Villa's training ground closed and a significant number of players isolating following that COVID-19 outbreak. So the FA say the game is going ahead, or the game going ahead is dependent on the new round of testing at Villa Park. So that will take place, as we mentioned, later. And should that game proceed, there will be a 7:45 p.m. start at Villa Park. Tonight's other tie then, Wolves entertaining Crystal Palace. So we wait with bated breath, Adrian, to see whether that game will go ahead.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it as well over the course of the day. What's coming up over the weekend and Off the Ball, tell us?
Fairly exciting weekend. We've got the Nolig Naman special, which has become an annual thing for Off the Ball. But this Sunday from 1 o'clock to 7, so 6 hours in total, Maura Trasny Callig is in the hot seat for us. She'll be joined on the paper review by Cleana Foley and Maureen Ivrinon from TG Cahir. We've got Keenan McGeehan Unleashed. Now, this was recorded in advance and really, really strong stuff. So Ellen Keane, the Paralympic swimmer, of course, and Kieran McGeehan, one of Ireland's top middle distance athletes from Portaferry, in conversation with Annalise Murphy, the Olympic silver medalist from 2016, of course, in the laser radial, and the Dutch runner and Kieran McGeehan's training partner, Jip Vastenberg. So loads of interesting topics they get through in that one. We've got a Lidl Ladies Gaelic football panel on Sunday as well, so that's from 4 to 5. We've got Dublin's Carla Rowe, Tipperary's Aisling Maloney, and indeed Donegal footballer Emer Gallagher. So plenty of big names in that one. Maura Trasny will also speak to the chair of the Transgender Equality Network Ireland. That's Sarah Phillips. That will take place at 5 o'clock on Sunday. While from 6 to 7, a really good panel, 20 by 21. So what's next for women's sport in Ireland will be Maura Trasny will be joined by Dr. Katie Liston, by Gráinne McElwain, and indeed by Joanna Reardon. So some really good stuff to look forward to in Nollaig the Man. That's 1 o'clock to 7 on Sunday, right here on Off the Ball. And then on Saturday, before that, we've got an Olympic panel. So from 1:30 to 2:30, John Duggan will be joined by Brendan Boyce, the Olympic walker, and sprint canoeist Jenny Egan among his guests for that Saturday panel. And then OTB Football Saturday, as per usual, 3 to 5 o'clock. Stephen Elliott, Johnny Ward and Dan McDonald. So 1 to 5 on Saturday and 1 to 7 on Sunday.
Yeah, and a reminder as well that on Sunday it's a really great show. Both days clearly, but Sunday it's a very special day. Shane mentioned every year for us, and delighted to be back on board again this year. And it is brought to you in association with Lidl. More for you in 2021 for Lidl's great range of healthy recipes and products to kickstart the new year. Check out Lidl.ie/healthy, and we're delighted to be partnering with Lidl on that. As I said, a very special day for us every year here on Off the Ball. Big news, Shane. Big news about football in Monaghan. We're in sort of down season and there's all sorts of rumours about who's training and what's going on where, but some monster news from Monaghan this week. I mean, they could do with something. They could do with a lift.
They could certainly do the lift. I mean, we here in Monaghan, any Monaghan GA fans are still kind of ruminating over the Cavan defeat, the one where they were 9 points up and really threw it away in the second half. And there's been a lot of animosity on if you want to call it Monaghan GA forums among fans, in comments on social media. Now, maybe social media is a bit of an echo chamber and we shouldn't place too much focus on it, but a lot of negativity towards Bandy McNeely and his role at the helm of Monaghan football. And look, it's like going back to an old flame. Maybe it doesn't work out the second time. People thought after the Cavan game maybe Bandy should move on and whatever else. And then we had the kind of news that came over the last couple of months. We had Conor Laverty, who's such a high-profile coach and has done really good things with Monaghan, but was only there for a year. The Kilcoo man, of course, but he's gone back to Down to coach the under-20 team there. You had Peter Donnelly, who, by the way, was a massive coup for Monaghan last year. He came from Tyrone, left Mickey Hart's backroom team, a strength and conditioning coach, came to Monaghan. But now that Mickey Hart has gone to Louth, Brian Dewar has taken over, Donnelly has gone back to Tyrone. So Monaghan were left with gaping holes in their backroom team. And then, of course, I remember where I was when it's not exactly worldwide news, but when Donny Buckley left the Kerry position in the backroom team back in March. By the way, he's only the second most famous Donny out of Kerry, as we've seen this week, but Buckley is well worth mention, and one of those coaches that when he leaves a position like he did Kerry in March, it sends a few shockwaves through the GAA world, and you're thinking, where's he going to head next? There was, all this talk of the fake WhatsApp messages regarding, Kerry player dissatisfaction with Peter Keane. That was put to bed by the county board chairman, Tim Murphy. Eoin can tell us all about that. But there is this kind of sense of frustration, you'd imagine, among Kerry players and the panel after Donny Buckley's departure. But then we had the news towards the end of last year that Donny Buckley was taking over as basically head coach of Monaghan under Banty McNeely. So I guess Banty's going to be the hype man in the dressing room. Buckley's going to take the training sessions. Now, he lives in Clare. That's a bit of a round trip. You're talking 3 or 4 hours from Clare in his home to Claughan in Monaghan, where Monaghan's senior team train. So it's going to be an interesting one. Diesel expenses are going to be quite high, you'd imagine. There is a lot more money in GAA than we I guess led on half the time. But Buckley's name, he was there for 6 years with Mayo as well, as they lost those three All-Ireland finals in 2013 and 16 and 17. He took Kerry to an All-Ireland final as well. So, I mean, Eoin, you can probably sell me on Donny Buckley.
I don't know, the end point of this, that Monaghan are going to make some sort of a run for the All-Ireland next year. And I'm also fascinated to hear most people say, like, I know where I was where Prince passed away, or like when Man landed on the moon. I know where I was when Donny Buckley left Kerry.
I was standing on Grafton Street, Adrian. What? I was standing on Grafton Street. I actually remember looking at my phone and thinking, this is big. This is big. No, that's a GA nerd looking at his phone and thinking this is big. So you can imagine my reaction when I looked at my phone and saw that Donny Buckley was joining the Monaghan backroom team. I definitely remember where I was then. But it's one of those moments.
What's the expectation, though? What's the minimum expectation for Monaghan?
It's an excitement level, because you think you see all these counties that have retirements left, right and centre. Kilconey's gone from Tyrone. Mayo have lost 4 or 5 players already. And you look at the Monaghan team in recent years, they lost a couple of elder statesmen. You have Desi Moan and Vinnie Corey and guys who are of that age anyway. Owen Duffy's another. But you see the likes of Conor McManus, some of the older players in the team as well, Darren Hughes, Fintan Kelly, Carl O'Connell, guys who've been around. But when you see someone like Donny Buckley come in, surely that gives these players a bit of a kick and a bit of a push. And, this is going to be an exciting year for Monaghan. That, if the league goes ahead, they're in this group with Donegal, Tyrone and Armagh. Donny obviously wants a chance maybe to challenge himself with an Ulster team, different brand of football, clearly, than he's used to in Kerry and Mayo, perhaps. But should be a bit of a challenge for him. Players will want to play under him, and training sessions should be exciting. We should also mention the fact that it's not the only addition to the Monaghan backroom team that's made headlines. I mean, we had Johnny Davis, who previously worked with Tyrone as strength and conditioning. He's come in to replace Peter Donnelly. But the big one this week was Gary Rogers, and it's quite an interesting one. I mean, he no stranger to Gaelic football, and clearly I think he was on the Meath senior panel at one stage when he was younger. He's worked in the Cavan backroom team, the Meath backroom team, the Westmeath backroom team, as goalkeeping coach, but always while he was still a League of Ireland goalkeeper. So he could only commit a certain amount of time to it, maybe one day a week, as he said himself. And he said Banty was on to him within 24 hours of his announcing his retirement last month. And I guess it ruminated in Gary Rogers' head over Christmas, and clearly wanted to stay involved with sport at some level. And the chance to work with Rory Beggan is one that probably excites him, and he'll be able to commit a bit more time to it, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. So I'm not saying Monaghan are going to win the All-Ireland with Gary Rogers and Donny Buckley, but we haven't been to an All-Ireland.
I'm not going to lie. Sounds like
we've only been to one All-Ireland final in our lifetimes, not in my lifetime, but in Monaghan GAA's lifetime. That's the 1930 All-Ireland final when Monaghan lost to Kerry. So, we were a kick of the ball away from it in 2018 when they lost to Tyrone after topping their Super 8s group. But who knows where Donny Buckley can take us? He's taken lead and Kerry to All-Ireland finals.
There's only so much Monaghan football backroom team that we can subject our viewers to, Shane, so we're going to leave it there. But enjoyed that thoroughly. Good man. Take it easy.
Cheers, lads.
Shane Annan on the line there. Plenty more coming your way. We'll have deals or no deals with deal or no deal even with Nathan Murphy coming your way a little bit, and a brand new slot that's here to stay, which will be Weekend Bingo with Eoin in just a little bit. But before all of that, we're going to talk rugby. Alan Quinlan is going to join us next on OTB AM. But first, take a look at this. It's the Munster lock, Finney Wycherley, chatting to Nathan on the show last night about his former coach Paul O'Connell and what he might bring to the Ireland setup.
I think it's fantastic. I think he's obviously, unbelievable coach, and he was an unbelievable player when he was playing, and I think he'll be a great addition to the group. I would have, he was in the academy obviously for a small while. He was in the Munster academy, so I would have worked closely with Paul at that time, being a second row, and him, learning off the best was obviously what I was doing, and I think. I'm unbelievably happy for him. Like he obviously has worked hard and he's waiting for his opportunity. I think he'll definitely be a great addition to their setup.
How long does that buzz last of I'm being trained by my hero? Or is it something every day you're sort of pinching yourself, or is it very quickly into a normal working relationship?
It's very quickly pushed over when he's telling you what to do or giving out. But I know, of course, I think anybody that works with them, they'll obviously appreciate it, but everyone knows they've got a job to do, and especially in an international setup, there'll be very little fellas that'll be in awe of them, for a whole through the camp. I can guarantee you that, and I think people have to work hard to earn his respect, and it'll be an interesting thing to see what he brings to the table.
Yeah, from what you've seen so far, what does he bring? Because being a great player, as we know in every sport, doesn't automatically mean you're going to be a great coach. But there's something about O'Connell and his thought process. You always sense that there was a lot going on there, a lot he could offer to young players coming through. From the time you spent with him, what is it that made him stand out?
For me, anyway, whenever I worked with him, it was just unbelievably committed to make you better. Was probably the thing I got from him. He was just anything you needed, he was there on the pitch for extras. He would have stayed on for an extra hour if you wanted to just go through something small in the line-out. He would have made it a big thing. If you thought it was a big thing, he'd help you out with it. And that's probably one thing that I learned from him, is that he's unbelievably committed to make you better as a player and as a person, especially when you were a bit younger in the academy. He was unbelievably understanding around those things. That's what I got from him.
Finney Wycherley in conversation with Nathan on the show last night. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Good. That's some endorsement. When you look at Paul O'Connell in terms of his coaching career, he's obviously been in some Ireland camps, been involved with the under-20s, some involvement with the Munster Academy previously, and obviously his time at Stade. seems to have dabbled and stepped away then again at times. This could be the ideal fit, but is it fair to say, Alan, that he's getting the job more because of his playing credentials rather than what he's served so far in terms of his time as a coach?
Yeah, he doesn't have a big CV from coaching, so it's a little bit different for him. I think there's a confidence there, though, that I said this on News Talks radio this morning and the breakfast show, that Paul has practically coached the Munster lineup for 12 years and the Irish lineup for 13 years. So I don't think there's as much emphasis and focus on a forwards coach when you have very experienced players who understand the line out inside out. You don't have to technically coach them on lifting and blocking and in the maul and, you know, move speed and movements, the gaps that you want to leave and all that kind of stuff, because they self-police that themselves, and that's a brilliant place for any forwards coach to be, where you go in and you're involved in the line and you just fine-tune it. Whereas I just think that the Irish team needs a little bit more guidance, experience and real life experience of a player being there. And he needs to steer them and organise them in a better way. I've said this for a while, and you know, there's a lot of talk about Ireland's attack, but the line out is the perfect weapon to launch attacks from. And it's not about winning the line out at the ball at the front of the line out, Adrian. It's about how can you get middle to back line out quality ball delivered on a play to the scrum half, who players can run onto it and attack, and it's harder to defend. And you go back to that English game, Ireland had 8 lineouts. They won 4, lost 4. The 4 they won were quite sloppy. They were quite sloppy.
Can he fix that?
Yes, because I'll tell you what he can do in very simple terms. I'm going back to the great statement that he made in Croke Park, where he puts the fear of God in people and the players around him. He'll put the fear of God in every player there, that they know their role inside out, and there will be no room for complacency as regards, oh, I forgot the line out, or I didn't understand that one, and you know, the lift was half-hearted, and you know, it should have been better. Of course, you're going to come up against good lineouts teams and top quality opposition who are going to try and master your lineout and figure out where you throw it. And sometimes you call a ball, and the lineout caller has to hold his hand up and say, look, it was a bad call, or else the opposition did brilliantly. But too often than last, even though our percentage level has been high in our lineouts and what we're winning, it's where we're winning and the type of delivery. So, you know, his coaching CV is very small, but he's done this. He's been in amongst the players, which is exactly what you want to do, to put pressure on them about the spacing, like half a yard here or there, like I mean up and down the Irish lineout, can make a massive difference. One step, if a player's too close, Jenny, should be a step back as regards a position you can win the ball in. It makes a massive, massive difference. So he'll break all that down. And I think, you know, if you come into a lineout, you can imagine Paul O'Connell and Devin Toner, your 2 second rows for Ireland at the moment, and a lineout coach comes in to coach them. He has very little to do because they're self-policing already. They're already putting pressure on the props, the back rowers. They're running the line out. But what he'll do now is he'll come in and he'll give that experience of leadership, not just for James Ryan, who's potentially is the caller, or Ian Henderson, or Ryan Baird, or Peter O'Mahony, or Caolan Doris, whoever. But he has to develop more leaders who can actually call the line out. So if one of them gets injured, there's a seamless transition into running a line out. And it sounds very easy, but it's so complex. And that goes down to
Quinny, can I ask you on that? Just, and I might want to come back on Paul O'Connell in a second, but just as a slight tangent to what you've said there, just in relation to specifically the roles of those involved in the line-out, like primarily the hooker, and you're saying maybe there's been at times a lack of quality communication or understanding of what the role is, which points a light for me back on Simon Easterby, and it just struck me as you were talking. You know, obviously it's been broken up to this point. They've now decided that Paul O'Connell is, amongst the things he's going to do, is help fix the line-out. And I don't know that reflects amazingly well on Simon Easterby, who they've moved over now to a defence role, and to say he's very excited about that. If they needed a defence coach at that level, surely they'd be looking to bring somebody in who's a specialist in that area. It looks like an unusual sideways move.
Yeah, no, to me it doesn't, because Simon as the defence before for Scarlets, he's actually a very inspirational guy himself. He's quieter. He's not a line-out expert to the level of Paul O'Connell. I've said this many times. Paul O'Connell is Victor Matfield, Steve Bortwick, Ali Williams, these kind of players who are, Nathan Sharp for Australia. These are guys who were world-class at what they did, running a line-out, specifically making the calls, not just calling a ball at 2, 4 and 6, but figuring out how the opposition are defending, what they're doing, and how you combat that, and how you go against that, and how you attack from that. So it sounds quite simplistic, a line-out that you just throw it to the guy at the front of the line and you win your ball and it's great. But it adds to your attack and the whole thing. Simon wouldn't have been a specialist line-out caller. He wouldn't have been someone who ran the line-out. He wouldn't have been someone. Of course, you can coach the line out and you can run but to get down to the real nitty gritty stuff, like I'll give you an example. I walked into lineouts with Munster with Paul, and both of us called lineouts together. So he called the full lineouts, I called the shortened lineouts where I would have stood at scrum half. And I had a better vision of where the opposition were defending, and we had hand signals, buzzwords, and calls. And walking into a full line-out with Paul O'Connell, I actually knew most probably where he was going to call the ball based on what the opposition, the way they were defending, because I was up to speed at his level. So what he has to do, and to explain this as simply as I can, is you ideally want 8 or all the forwards, obviously, but the 8 that are starting and the guys on the bench, nearly before any call is made, having a fair idea what call he's going to bring, where it's going to be called to, because they can look at the opposition, and this is down to props and backers who traditionally wouldn't be the guy winning the ball in the air. But so it's just bringing everyone up a level and making sure their knowledge and understanding. It's the understanding. It's not an ability to learn calls and know, well, this movement, that movement is this call and that call. It's actually having an ability that they really understand the line out, and they nearly know where it's going to be called before it is called. And Paul has a great ability to do that. So it may seem a little bit awkward for Simon Easterby, and I'm sure he's done a brilliant job with him, and he'll acknowledge to himself, this guy is at a different level at running a line-out. I've been there week in, week out with him, down in the south of France, playing with Munster, where the crowd are going crazy and there's a calmness about him. Now, I've commentated a few years ago, and I remember one game in Wales where Ireland lost, and 1 or 2 calls, Paul, he of course, anybody can make a mistake and call a line-out in the heat of the battle. But he's the first to acknowledge and beat himself up over that. So even in their reviews, it'll be explained, and it'll be, I just think it was too good for them not to bring him in. And, it's a big job coaching. And in fairness, he'll get scrutinised very, very hard. And, if Ireland's lineup doesn't go that well in the Six Nations, there'll be pressure on him. But I think this is an opportunity. A lot of these players will respect him as well.
Is Paul O'Connell's ambition to be a head coach one day?
I don't know, and Paul will tell you nothing. I think there's a big job and big role in being a head coach, and everyone acknowledges that. It's a 6 o'clock in the morning job till 10 o'clock at night, even when you're at home. You can never switch off. Now, Paul gets so stuck into things that I'm sure he's working on Ireland lineouts already and analysing the players, and so yeah, of course he has the ability to do that. It's just depending on whether he wants it. But I think he has those natural leadership qualities, which, of course, it's different being a coach. You can be a great player and a great leader as a captain, but you've got to translate it a little bit differently, and you've got to understand your players. Not everybody you can't slap everybody in the back. You have to put your arm around some guys, and you have to caress them and move them different ways. And, you know, you have to get an understanding, and you get experience with that, how you treat people and stuff. So Paul is fiery. He'll put massive pressure on guys, but the pressure, he's probably got to understand this. And this is something as a captain you learn, is how you deal with guys, because giving out to guys or being hard on them can take away their little bit of confidence, and they can shrink a little bit. Other guys love it, love being challenged. So it's a big picture on and learning all that kind of stuff. I had fights with Paul over him shouting in the dressing room or saying different things to people, and trying to say some guys are different. They just want to chill out before a game. I remember one game in Cork, he came screaming around the dressing room. Myself and John Hayes were having a grand chat. We were laughing and joking, and he wanted everyone's game face on, like ever before we went out for the warm-up. And I remember having a chat afterwards saying, that was my way of keeping my bit of calmness. It wasn't that I wasn't focused. And, you know, he acknowledged that. But look, Paul is a brilliant coach. He's a brilliant leader. And I think he'll bring these guys on to a level where they need to get to, because I think they're lacking in confidence. We've seen a lot of movement on in the Irish line-out in the last year. And for me, a lot of movement means there's a bit of lack of confidence there, and they're just going through calls for the sake of it. Why is the movement happening, I would ask? Why is there a need for it? Sometimes you have to have movement and different sort of stuff, but our line-out has become a little bit slow, a little bit pedestrian. And, you know, Maro Itoje and Joe Launchbury, with all due respect to them, they destroyed any chance of us playing well in Twickenham in November, because they unsettled our line-out so much. And they're not the best defensive line-out operators in the world. They're brilliant rugby players, but they're not the best defensive line-out operators. So there needs to be way more clarity. You need to expand the line-out leadership group, an ability for guys to call the line-out right across the back row. So if your 2 seconders are not calling it, one of your back rows can actually make the calls. We've relied too much on... And you know, Paul has developed players as a player. Donncha Ryan, someone, when I started out, Donncha was so quiet. He didn't really... he was a good line-out operator, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't someone who was a line-out caller. I didn't really see that in him. But as the years went on, he suddenly became more dominant, confident, and went away and studied unbelievably. Donncha's a real student of the game, and became this line-out caller who can walk into a line-out for Racing now and just be calm and call it to the right areas. Mick O'Driscoll, brilliant line-out operator. Devin Toner. And lots of guys have said they've learned from Paul, you know. So the challenge is now translating that message as a coach, because he's now going to have people who are going to... It's not buddy time anymore. You know, he's going to be making a decision and telling Andy Farrell, well, he's a selector effectively now. He's going to be selecting guys in that pack as well.
Yeah. I should say it's 9:07 on this Friday morning. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Ulster against Leinster this weekend is the game I just want to focus on for a moment. It's a very interesting Leinster team, but there's also been some very interesting comments coming from the Ulster camp this week. Dan McFarland was asked if he feels sorry for Leo Cullen's plight, I think was the question, about how ex-Leinster players are performing so well for Connacht and Ulster with that little bit of incentive to play well against their former province. His response: do I feel sorry for Leo? Of course I don't. He's sat amongst 10 or 12 of the wealthiest schools in the country, ploughing people with rich families through the schools, churning out bursaries to the best prospects. Do I feel sorry for him? That's hilarious. A little bit of needle here, Alan, between Dan McFarland and Leo Cullen, it seems.
He's only telling the truth, though, isn't he? And I don't think he means it too disrespectfully towards Leo. Look, I said this before. If I was Leo Cullen, head coach of Leinster, it's frustrating to lose some of your players. I think, particularly the ones you really want to keep. He can't keep every player, and there's a number of players in all the provinces, and that's what's happening, and that's going to continue to happen because Leinster produce so many players, and the school system in Dublin is the envy of people right across Europe because they're like mini academies essentially. These players are given proper nutrition advice. They're availability to brilliant gyms, fitness coaches, ex-international players, top quality coaches who work with them on an individual basis as well. So when they come out of school, they're far more developed and rounded as players than the other provinces, because they're getting that time and investment, and the money is there in these schools, and that's just the way it is, and that's the reality. There's a couple of players Leo has lost in the last couple of years that will really frustrate. The most high profile one is probably Joey Carberry, who's someone who probably could have started as a full back and has played loads and loads of games and end up playing loads, which he did before he left. But I think it was down to him wanting to start as a 10. And, so fringe players, not a problem. But I think if you lose one or two of your starters that you want to keep, it's very difficult. So it's a reality what he's saying. It's plain for everybody to see that they have more players to choose from, and they are going to produce more players. And I don't think Leo Cullen's looking for pity, because he knows that, and their system, which is fantastic, and what it's done, and the way they get the players probably at a more advanced stage, because they're essentially in mini academies in all the schools. So it'll spice it up a little bit. But if I was an ex-Leinster player playing against Leinster, of course you want to play well. You want to, in an ideal world, they would be playing back in their own province, but they've integrated into Munster, Ulster, Connacht, and these players, and of course they'd want to get one up in their old province for sure.
Yeah, all right. Lots of interesting games as well this weekend. We're out of time, Quinny. Thanks a million. Enjoy the rugby over the weekend.
Lads. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. And a reminder as well that the OTB AM podcast, by the way, available wherever it is that you get your podcast. You can subscribe there and get our daily episodes. We'll time stamp it as well. It makes it far much more handy to flick through and find it is exactly what it is that you want. You want it all, of course, is kind of the short story, but we want to make it easy for you as well. And in this morning's pod, we're going to have Liverpool chat with Caoimhe O'Neill, and also the brilliant Eric Donovan as well, who was with us a little bit earlier on. A bit of GA with Sheahan. I mean, it's a quirky bit of GA, but it's there for you. And rugby with Quinny as well, as you've just been hearing. We're going to have Nathan as well, who's going to join us in just a little bit for Deal or No Deal. And right now, Eoin is going to bring us a brand new slot. It's here to stay. It's Weekend Bingo.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
What's your back row ideal world?
All right, I thought we were playing an ad break there. Well, we are back. You're welcome back to Weekend Bingo. As Adrian said, it is a new slot because we're so bloody good at predictions. Let's get things underway here. We're going to have a bingo card on screen. We're going to populate this with the things that are definitely going to happen this weekend and things to keep an eye on. We'll go back on this on Monday. So the first thing this weekend is Padraig Amond to score a goal against Brighton and Hove Albion. So I don't think it is possible for Padraig Amond to rock up to a game against a Premier League side in the FA Cup and not score. He's going to become Ireland's all-time top scorer in the FA Cup should he score against Brighton. It's a Sunday night fixture. It's perfectly primed for the Carlo man to step up and grab the headlines once again. He loves this weekend. Amond to score. Hasn't been starting the last couple of games. He's been coming off the bench, but I expect him to score this weekend because he's Padraig Amond. It is the third round of the FA Cup. Next up, in relation to the FA Cup. So it's been a season full of surprises. Of course, plenty of those surprises were geared at the start of the season when people were trying to get used to low crowds, no crowds, and a couple of injuries here and there. And we've had some freak results in the Premier League. What's happened now is that there's been a big fixture congestion. There's going to be teams who are absolutely shattered, and a lot of weekend teams, if there are enough fixtures go ahead this weekend, played by Premier League sides. I expect this to be a chaotic third round weekend in the FA Cup. I expect there to be a lot of shocks, and as a result, a lot of people getting carried away with the amount of shocks that we have, and therefore plenty of think pieces being written next week on how this weekend has saved the FA Cup. Keep an eye on that should we have a lot of shocks. Next up, transfer speculation this Sunday. It's not a busy football weekend. It's not a Premier League weekend. So, there's not a whole pile that people are going to be writing about. So there's going to be a lot of transfer speculation that's going to make it into the Saturday and Sunday papers, I suspect. I was thinking here, could Kevin De Bruyne perhaps be linked somewhere, given he's in contract negotiations at the moment? Well, I don't think so. His agent was jailed last year and he's representing himself. So I don't think that's going to happen. Heung-min Son in the media about being linked away from Spurs, given he's negotiating a new deal. I don't think so either. I think he's locked in there. The player that I think is going to be the centre of a story soon is Jack Grealish, and that Manchester United are preparing to make a bid for Jack Grealish. Of course, preparing a bid means they sign him this summer or next summer, not this exact window. But the word preparing is just such a perfect term that it's a catch-all phrase, and it'll be right eventually, like a broken clock, essentially. Next up, the words Leinster and backlash are going to appear in the same headline. So they were beaten by Connacht last week, strong team named this week. And I think this is actually the easiest pick of the week, especially if Leinster win. It will be deemed a backlash. Next up, GAA retirements. Expect more of them this weekend. Is the Mayo exodus done? I'm not so sure. I think Kerry have one more retirement to come, and we haven't really seen any Dublin retirements yet. I think we're going to see a few Dublin retirements over the next little while, and the weekend is always a good time to retire. You've had a week to think about it, been back to work, you said Happy New Year to loads of people, and now is the time to retire. It is a high bar, but I'm going to say 3 inter-county retirements this weekend. Next up, your NFL group is going to be hopping with NFL fans who are going to be sick of bandwagoners. So just beware, if you haven't been following the NFL all season, if you now post anything on social media or in a WhatsApp group featuring a lot of NFL fans, you will get beaten down by hardcore fans, patronized by hardcore fans, told you're an idiot by hardcore fans. For example, be very wary of saying anything about Stephon Diggs, because your NFL expert in your WhatsApp group will say, well, actually, he had over 1,500 receiving yards all season. I knew him before he was cool. Get off your high horse, bandwagoner. The NFL isn't for you. That is one thing you are going to experience this weekend if you're an NFL newcomer. Also, as well, which brings us on to prediction number 7, NFL broadcasters are going to soil themselves whenever it becomes inevitable that they have to mention the Trump mob storming the Capitol this week. Look out for this on the games on Fox, especially because the NFL has been a little bit more open to protests in recent seasons. But if we see any noticeable increase in protest as a result of this week's events, expect those broadcasters to start sweating and perform jazz hands. Next up, second last one, Tom Brady being as smug as you can possibly be. This is something that is definitely going to happen this weekend because Washington football team are up against Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round of the playoffs. Tom Brady is the Tampa QB, and on Saturday night, he is going to help his side to victory. Then, a couple of hours after the game, a 15-second selfie captioned W will appear on Tom Brady's Twitter account. In the video, he will talk about how happy he is with the team's performance, and he will conclude his message by saying, "Let's go." At that very moment, the beat will drop, and on screen we will have a clip of Tampa looking sensational. He will look incredibly smug, but at the same time, Tom Brady is 43 years old, so he could tweet, "Suck on this," and it will be totally fair enough. Finally then, COVID chaos. Unfortunately, hate to be a bummer here, but there's every chance we're going to see more postponements across sport this weekend. Liverpool versus Villa in a bit of jeopardy tonight, although it looks like it's going to go ahead. There's not exactly a whole pile of midweek fixtures to slot fixtures into if there are postponements. And I would be astonished if you picked up a newspaper on Sunday or Monday and the term COVID chaos isn't used in some capacity. There's your bingo card for the weekend ahead.
I'm having most of that on. I'm just slightly disgusted that it isn't a weekend of GAA championship with some live commentaries, and you could absolutely stick a mention of Donny O'Sullivan, your own compatriot, on that list as well. He would definitely feature if there was GAA commentary this weekend.
Of course there was, but there is no GAA, so we got to make do with retirements.
Shawnee90 on Instagram says that Klopp will have a moan about something. Matthew C says that Aston Villa against Liverpool will be called off. Jay Rooney says more COVID news. Not a great shocker with that. And Joe says Connacht will get smashed by Munster in don't know we get that onto the bingo card, but it's there.
Well, let's throw it in. Let's expand the bingo card next week if there are enough good suggestions. We'll put it up on Instagram every Thursday night, and we might review this on Monday. If none of those things come through, maybe this is off to a very bad start to the point where it'll never recover.
Bingo is coming back on. I can see it in my future as I can. Nathan Murphy. There's something subliminally telling me that Nathan is standing by and he is pumped and ready for action, and he's coming your way next.
AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
What's your back row ideal world?
God, Joe, you really put me on the spot here. Andy Farrell drinks in the same, well, when pubs are open, he drinks in the same pub as me down the road. So, like, come on, I need to go in and be able to have a pint with this man. I suppose ideal back row. Look, if Levy's back, I start him all day.
Okay.
I'm really liking Jack O'Donoghue, by the way. I think he's coming into his element more and more and more. I would like him to actually get a bit more game time. And then I would probably put Caoimhe at 8 and I'd put CJ at 6 if I was on.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Bet smart this season with stat betting on the Boyle Sports app. For the first time ever, bet on shots, shots on target, tackles, passes, assists and more, all powered by Opta. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest game of the week right now on the Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training I was driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's frightening. It's Nathan Murphy.
Good morning.
How are you getting on? Happy New Year.
I'm all right. Happy New Year to you. We're still on that. Let's not go all Kenny Cunningham on it again.
No, we're all for it. A lot of interesting stuff happening. It's deal or no deal, in case people haven't picked up on that, at 9:20 on this Friday morning, and lots of interesting stuff, some of which we've been discussing already, but particularly we're going to kick things off, Nathan, with something close to home for yourself. Conflicting reports during the week about Mo Salah and whether or not he's on Real Madrid's summer shopping list. He's contracted up to 2023, not that that means anything. So the question here is if Madrid or another super club come in with a big money offer this summer, and with everything else that's gone on at Liverpool, would it be a smart time to ship him on, or is he too important to consider selling?
He's too important to consider selling. I know he's going to be 29 by the end of the season, but we're talking about the Premier League's top scorer once again this season. He's a player who, anytime he has any sort of a barren spell, gets a huge amount of criticism, but he is still Liverpool's most technically gifted footballer. He is the one who has that bit of magic, who out of nothing creates goals, scores important goals, scores late goals. Generally, when they've needed him, he has always stepped up. And you can understand why there would be speculation. He's somebody who's very quiet, who anything you hear about off the pitch is a very good guy who's kept his head down. This hasn't been a constant stream of rumours over the last 3-4 years, which generally is what happens when you have somebody of the talent of Mo Salah. When you go back to him scoring 32 Premier League goals in a season, straight away you would have expected really strong links with Real Madrid. But I would be shocked if Liverpool got rid. It's incredibly difficult to replace a player of the quality.
Have they not already replaced him? Is that not another big reason for getting him out of there?
With who? Jota,
yeah.
Jota's done well, and he's made as good an impact as you could have expected. But Mo Salah's goal-scoring return is as good as we've seen from a Liverpool player in recent years. So Mo Salah's one of the best footballers in the world, in the top 10, if not in the top 5 best footballers in the world. Diogo Jota is not quite there yet. And I still think if you were looking at any of the three to sell, that Salah would be the last one I would sell. And I understand the constant talk about Firmino of he's the first name on the team sheet. Firmino hasn't been at his best for the last year. Sadio Mane hasn't been at his best so far this season. Yet both of them escape the sort of criticism Salah does when he just goes a few games without scoring. So I would be incredibly reluctant if I was Jurgen Klopp to sell Salah. You've got to remember that he hasn't hit the 32 goals. One of the reasons he hasn't got to that level is that teams are all over him now. He creates the space for other players because they're so wary of the damage that Mo Salah could do. And I'm also not convinced by the Real Madrid link either. You'd have to imagine they've been a little bit burnt by the signing of Eden Hazard at his age. There's no sell-on value for Salah if he goes to Real Madrid. And all the speculation out of Spain is that they're looking at something younger. So whether it's Erling Haaland or the never-ending links with Kylian Mbappe, Salah would be a very different signing. And we know that Liverpool don't let anybody go cheap. Like if you're getting 15, 20 million quid for Dominic Solanke, what are you looking at for Mo Salah?
Yeah, and maybe one of the other reasons that he's not scoring as much, or they're not scoring as much as they might, is that obviously Fabinho and Henderson have been called elsewhere, and that might be a contributing factor, which leads us on to the question about what Liverpool are going to do with the centre-back in the window. Like Klopp obviously saying this week, it's a tricky situation. He, saying January is also, is always a difficult window to do business in. This kind of guff that might really just be gaming the opposition, or it might be gaming potential sellers. Like surely there's no question about this, Nathan, that they need to bring somebody in. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody that they're planning to have to guarantee game time to in the long term, but there must be a 30-something centre-back somewhere that they can bring in, that they must bring in. Surely they can't survive without a new centre-back.
I'd agree and disagree. I think they do need to bring a centre-back in. I said this earlier in the week that you do not want to be finishing this season missing out on the title by a couple of points because of errors at the back when you could have gone and spent the money. I don't think they need to go and sign a 30-year-old. Klopp needs the right type of centre-half. And you're talking about Salah. One of the reasons they're not creating as much is because the defence is set up differently, that they can't play. Everything in Liverpool links together. So you can't have a 30-year-old who doesn't have a lot of pace, who can't play this ridiculously high line up on the halfway line, who doesn't have the pace to get back. They just can't do that. But I do think, looking at Joe Gomez's injury history, looking at the fact that Virgil van Dijk isn't exactly 24, 25 when he does return, that you could go and spend whatever money you're planning on spending in a year, 18 months' time, right now, on that centre half, who can be first choice for 3 or 4 years. Why not go and bring that forward? But I do think they have to do something. If they don't, I would expect they'll stick with that rotation of Phillips will get a game here, Williams will get a game when Matip, whenever he's fit. But even a fully fit Joel Matip, everything we've seen suggests he can only play 1 game a week, and Liverpool are going to have 2 games a week every week between now and the end of the season. We'll see Jordan Henderson slotting in there as well, which maybe isn't as big an issue now that Thiago is back. But I think if you have the opportunity to go, and if you can somehow get that target, go and buy them. He's right, January is more difficult because if you are at a club of Liverpool's calibre, you're looking at other clubs of that calibre to spend a lot of money on. And clubs don't want to sell, particularly now when there are so many games where there's little time to get a replacement. So it is a juggling act. I wouldn't believe a huge amount of what he says because Liverpool get their business done quietly and behind the scenes. But if you're looking at a 30-year-old or a more mature defender, like are you looking at somebody like Connor Cody at Wolves, who obviously they have a decent relationship with, that you go in there and like Cody started his career at Liverpool, you go in and maybe Wolves are looking at his contract and you're thinking 30, 35 million gets you that.
That'd be a desperate move for
the next 2 or 3 years. For him.
Yeah. In that when everybody's fit again.
Arguably the best team in Europe. I don't think going to Liverpool is a desperate move for any player. I think it's a dream move for any player.
Ultimately, he's not going to play.
But I think he will. I think he will. I think this is, if they go and they sign. So Liverpool's first choice, ideally, I'm sure from Jurgen Klopp's point of view, for the next 3 years would be Joe Gomez, Virgil van Dijk, week in, week out. But there's no guarantees that either of them are going to be fit. We don't know what Van Dijk is going to come back like, whether there's going to be a niggly injury there as he starts to return. And Joe Gomez has had consistent injury problems. So there's going to be an opportunity for somebody to play a lot of games. Would you prefer to be the main man, the captain, the leader at Wolves and get yourself into the England squad and possibly starting for England during the summer as Connor Cody would? I'm sure that is something he's very focused on. But there's no reason all that can't happen right now. There's never been a better time for a centre-half to go to Liverpool. Like you could go right now for 6 months and end up winning the league and the Champions League.
Did you just say going to the best team in Europe?
I think Liverpool are in the top 2.
Oh, he's reverse lights there on. That's what we're hearing.
You don't think Liverpool are in that?
Well, I mean, I just think you rushed in your fit of peak to defend Liverpool's potential bid for Connor Cody. You rushed in with a fairly outlandish kind of a claim.
There's nothing outlandish. But
to say that the best team in Europe is
things that will be said.
incorrect.
Well, factually incorrect, but Bayern Munich were the best team in Europe 6 months ago. These things change quite quickly. But Liverpool are the Premier League champions. So the 2 best teams in Europe right now are Bayern Munich and Liverpool. So to say that there's no reason to suggest Liverpool aren't the best team in Europe, that they wouldn't go and beat Bayern Munich if they meet in the Champions League this season. But that is the level Liverpool are at. So if you're Conor Cody, as well as your links to the place, I think the opportunity to go to Liverpool, if it comes along, you're taking it every day of the week.
Speaking of one of the best teams in Europe, Manchester United, Nathan, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer have bought one of the most exciting young prospects in the game. They've completed the signing of Atalanta teenager Amad Diallo. 18-year-old comes in for an initial fee of 21 million quid. There'll be add-ons as well, and roughly sort of double that. Give us a 30-second roundup of what we know about Amad Diallo.
That he's very young, has a huge amount of talent, but has played very little first-team football. So last season, he got some game time, and it was almost a year before he started to get game time in the league again for Atalanta. Part of that seems because Manchester United were in, and maybe they didn't feel the need to have him playing every match because they knew he was going to leave the club. So it's a lot of money for a lot of unproven talent. It comes with a big reputation, but at 18, I know they're saying they're going to put him into the first-team squad. It is that long-term planning of, well, if he can play out on the right-hand side, if you're going to move Mason Greenwood eventually into the middle, does he become part of a front three alongside Rashford and Greenwood? You know, could he play possibly a little bit deeper at times? So everything I've read, I've only seen him for 20 minutes against Midtjylland. I was doing the commentary on Atalanta against Midtjylland, and he looked good. He didn't look like an 18-year-old. He didn't look out of his depth in any way. But considering the lack of game time for somebody of the quality of Danny van de Beek so far this season, it's hard to see how Diallo is going to be thrown in and playing week in, week out. But at 18, Manchester United are taking a punt, obviously, but they feel, and they would trust their scouting system, that it's a worthwhile punt.
Yeah, he'll probably come in and sit in the bench for a while, as Donny has done. And there's been some chat about that, obviously, this week. Dimitar Berbatov saying that he should be banging on Ole's door, which I'm sure he probably is. He says, I wouldn't be surprised if he's starting to look for the exit, and nobody will blame him. Something isn't working. And United, for their part, are saying that they brought him into the club with future seasons in mind. And there's a lot of clamour to get him in the team. The future seasons in mind thing seems slightly bizarre in that, like, they struggled at times this season in a way that he might have been able to fix some of those issues. So what happens here, Nathan? Does he himself clamour for the exit door, or is he going to stay patient? And gaze into your ball there, your crystal ball, and tell us what's in the future of Donny van de Beek.
Well, the instant future, I guess, is he's looking at the Euros coming up, and he wants to be in that Dutch team. And if he's not playing any football, it's going to be very difficult for him to force his way into that. He started one Premier League game. He's not a kid. He's not this 18-year-old coming in. He was a key player for Ajax 2 years ago. He's also versatile in that he can play in that. One of the exciting parts for Manchester United was you felt, well, you know, he could play in that defensive role. He could play instead of Bruno Fernandes if they needed to rest him. He could play out on the right-hand side instead of Mason Greenwood. And we haven't seen him in any of these places at all. So one Premier League start. Clearly something is going on, whether he was thrust upon Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that a deal was done in the background and Solskjaer wasn't quite sure. In fairness to Solskjaer, if he doesn't see a spot from him, who are you dropping? Who are you leaving out of that Manchester United team right now? If he doesn't trust them, say, as a defensive midfielder, and I've heard Damien Delaney talking about how, because United's back four, he feels, are quite weak, that they need that double protection of Fred and Scott McTominay. I'm sure Solskjaer would prefer to have a player in there that he doesn't need two defensive midfielders to protect his defence. And maybe that's where somebody like a Donny van de Beek could come in and get a little bit more game time. But he's not going to get it in that advanced role that Bruno Fernandes is playing, because Fernandes is simply undroppable. And it may just be one of those unfortunate cases. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but again, I suppose we're looking at the wealth of Manchester United and compared to everyone else, that they can go and spend 20 million, possibly raising to 40 million on an 18-year-old kid who may not feature for a year, 18 months, that United can write off 40 million. And Van de Beek shouldn't have lost a huge amount of value if he were to go during the summer. But he has become that sort of cause célèbre for Manchester United supporters, that whenever they're losing, it's, where is he? And how can he show his best stuff when you're getting 5-10 minutes off the bench?
No, it's very difficult. Yeah, very difficult. I've seen you at times, Nathan, be accused of being a Manchester United supporter during your commentary. So one more on that, because it looks like Steve Bruce has been linked with a bunch of Manchester United reserves, Phil Jones among them, who's the biggest surprise for me is that he's 28, it says here in my script. Are these a bunch of players that there's him, Jesse Lingard is in there, Brandon Williams, this will be the most important thing to help Newcastle's survival or their future, or would they have any impact at all?
You'd have to think they've all got quality that would improve Newcastle at left back. They're playing Matt Ritchie at the moment. Brandon Williams, when he's played for Manchester United, it's a surprise that they would let him go. I'd expect it might be a loan deal for Williams. I know he's been linked with a move to Germany as well, and that they have Telles and they have Shaw there at the moment. But I think for a young player, keep that option open of bringing him back if he goes and if he was to flourish for half a season at Newcastle. Jesse Lingard's played little or no football over the last couple of years. He's on the bench, getting a few minutes, barely even a few minutes here and there. For him to come in now mid-season and make an impact. But Newcastle don't really have a solid team behind Callum Wilson, Joe Linton. They seem to do a lot of rotation in midfield. Hendrick is in and out, so I'm sure Lingard would get plenty of game time. And like Phil Jones, we haven't seen either. They've got a lot of centre-backs, Newcastle. From an Irish point of view, I wouldn't particularly be too keen to see him there. I want to see Kieran Clark continue in the heart of that Newcastle defence. He's looked really strong since he's come back from injury. He's somebody that you would be surprised if he stays fully fit, would be starting alongside John Egan for Ireland, maybe ahead of Shane Duffy even come March. So these are how these transfers work. Steve Bruce has the connections at United. The only thing is, you'd imagine particularly Lingard and Jones are on a huge wage bill. And while they may come at a reduced price, I know Lingard, they activated his contract extension to keep some sort of value there. Is Mike Ashley going to sanction a move on wages well into six figures a week?
Jesse Lingard is the most Newcastle player of all time, so we'll that's an inevitability that move will happen at some point. Give me 30 seconds now, an actual 30 seconds this time, on just to wrap up. Mark Travers completed a move to League One. Swindon obviously failed to make the breakthrough at Bournemouth. Smart move for him, 21?
Yeah. 21 is the key. He's a goalkeeper at 21, still incredibly young. The remarkable thing for Travers is he got in so early for Bournemouth and made those few appearances in the Premier League. But there's no shame in not making it Bournemouth this season. Asmir Begovic is their goalkeeper, 33, been at Chelsea, Bosnian keeper, 80 internationals. So if Begovic stayed and Begovic was fit and interested, he was probably always going to be the number one for Bournemouth. Travers obviously feels he needs to go and get some game time quickly, and it's a good thing for Ireland again, where we don't have goalkeepers playing, that coming into March, if he has a run of games now, albeit in League One, well, it's better than him sitting on the bench at Bournemouth. But I think Mark Travers still has a long way to go in this game.
Yeah. All right, good man. I was going to tell you enjoy the football tonight, but I don't know that it's actually going to happen. But I presume it's still in the same holding pattern.
Well, Villa reserves, Villa under 23s.
Yeah.
Might
versus
be what
Liverpool's under 23s. We'll see. Good man, Nathan. Thanks.
The excitement to the cup
for today.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right, Eoin, I've been delighted to be back in your company. 2021 is off to an absolute belter.
And enjoy the weekend. Any plans?
Nothing. No, absolutely nothing. If it stops raining long enough, I might paint the front wall. That's the sort of excitement you're dealing with about here. What about yourself?
No painting involved for me either. So an even duller weekend than yourself.
Good man. Well, look, we'll catch up with you next week. You'll be back in the air again on Monday. Happy New Year to you, and great to chat to you again. It's OTB AM live weekday mornings from 7:30, live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're back Monday morning. There's so much happening on OTB Sports. In the meantime, you can check all that out on our app. But right now, bringing you the very first chat of the year with John Giles. Enjoy.
Happy New Year.
And you and all the listeners.
You got through to Christmas safely?
Yeah, no problem. Didn't do much. Nathan kept out of the way. I was very lucky though. I got my 2 jabs.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So you're vaccinated?
I'm vaccinated, Nathan. Yeah, luckily enough. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what sort of difference is that going to make to you?
Well, the big difference is I won't be as terrified as I was about getting the virus, Nathan. That's the main thing. I'm not doing much else, to be honest. There's nobody else is. It's whether it be in Ireland or England at the moment. But it's just a relief to know that at least I've got the jabs in.
Yeah, because I know you were saying you were going out for your daily walk, but you're at a stage where when someone was coming towards you, you were almost having to cross the road.
I always did cross the road, Nathan. That's how that was. But anyway, it's we're into the new year now. Anyway, Nathan.
Yeah.
We'll enjoy our football anyway.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure it's a huge relief to you and all the family.
Definitely. Yeah, it's great. I'm delighted with it.
Well, hopefully the rollout speeds up for the rest of us, John, and things will get back to some sort of normality. But I think it's going to be a tough few weeks and a few months to come for everybody still, unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll just get on with it. You know, it'll go someday, Nathan. You know, I've got to get over to Dublin as well and see a few pals and maybe get out and have a drink with yourself, Nathan, if you fancy it.
Absolutely, John. I look forward to it. Maybe even more than one.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sure, like everybody else, you were ended up watching a lot of football then over the Christmas. When every match is on, it almost felt like you ended up missing it when there was a night with no football, which was rare enough. Main takeaways then, it seems Manchester City are back.
Yeah, well, as you know, only 2-3 weeks ago, Nathan, on the programme, I said I think they've gone. But they've been revitalised, if that's the right word, Nathan. I think they were impressive against Manchester United last night, definitely, and at one or two other matches. I think what's happened is what I can see anyway, is there's more emphasis on defending than ever before with Pep. And luckily enough, they've got, I think that so far anyway, it looks like they've got a good defender, two good defenders. Stones is back, I think, to his best. It looks like it anyway so far. And Diaz looks like a good centre half. So they didn't have that before for a long time anyway. And they're actually defending well. The two matches I saw them in recently, they've been very, very good defensively. And against United last night, they were very good. And they played well. So the way the season has gone, with nobody running away with it like Liverpool did, they're probably in with as good a chance as anybody else if Liverpool don't do what they did last year.
I know when we spoke about City last season, you brought up the absence of Vincent Kompany, and his departure has been one of the reasons for their decline. In Ruben Dias, I know he's only 23, but they spent a lot of money. He's played every game since he's come in. Have they got that proper replacement now for Kompany at the back?
Well, I think it's very, very difficult to replace Kompany, Nathan, but you can only get the best you can available anyway. With the players that they have brought in, which is Diaz, and if Stones does get back to the potential he showed, which he looks like, I thought he played very well in the last couple of matches I've seen him play. Well, that's something they haven't had since Kompany left.
Yeah.
Like Kompany, it's very difficult to replace him, but you can do your best. You can get somebody in who's good enough to do the job, maybe not quite as good as him. But what I've seen on the last couple of matches, that's between Diaz and Stones, they look very, very solid. Now, whether they continue to do that or not, Nathan, remains to be seen. But it's something that I haven't seen from City since Kompany left.
That's reflected in the statistics as well. They've only conceded 13 goals in their 15 Premier League games. They've conceded the fewest in the Premier League table. Is it just the individuals then, you think, that have changed them defensively, or has Guardiola changed his style to make them a bit more solid?
Well, I think when you get defenders in like Stones and Diaz, it does change the style. They wouldn't be quite as attractive coming forward, Nathan. But you could put up with that if you're not conceding the goals. If I had something about Guardiola, it would be not concentrating enough on defending, despite the fact that of many things that he's won. I think you have to be solid in defence. And when they were Kompany with that, they didn't lose many goals, despite the fact that they were going forward as much. But in last year and so, they conceded a lot of goals, silly stuff. Nathan, they haven't done that this season, and especially in the last few matches. So, I think it's a plus for them.
Yeah.
This time last year, I don't know how many goals they conceded this time last year, Nathan. It was quite a few overall in the season. Whereas now, as you said, it was the last 6, 7, 8 matches. They've been very, very good at defending, not giving away silly goals at all, or giving goals in any sort of goals away.
What we saw against Chelsea at the weekend in particular felt like the old Manchester City, in that, as well as being solid at the back, there was suddenly a bit of energy, a bit of excitement. The speed of passing was back to almost where it was, because as much as they've improved defensively, they've kind of had to, when you look at the other end of the pitch, where the goals have dried up in a way. They've scored fewer goals than any other side in the top 10, which for a side that a couple of years ago scored a record amount of Premier League goals is quite a decline. Have you seen something then against Manchester United, against Chelsea, and over the Christmas period that as an attacking force, Guardiola's getting them back to where they were a couple of seasons ago?
I think so, Nathan. Don't forget they've been without their strikers, and they scored a goal. They scored 2 goals last night and the 3 goals against Chelsea. But there was more to them, like the old City night, especially against Chelsea coming back. That's the first time I've seen it this season, where there was a life about them and getting at the opposition, which they did. They did extremely well, and against Manchester United. And that's the winning combination for Manchester City. You know, getting the ball back quickly, which they weren't doing at the early part of the season, and losing goals as well. So they've put. I think with not losing the goals, it helps the lads in the team, Nathan, to have the will to get tight on the opposition. I think if you're conceding goals and you're not playing well, you're less likely to do it. So they've definitely come on in recent weeks, defensively and attacking-wise, getting at the opposition. They've done that extremely well in 2 matches. Like nobody, I didn't fancy them going to Chelsea last week, and they won extremely well. And again, against Manchester United, it was always going to be a big match for them, and they deserve to win it. Defending well, and also getting at the opposition as well. So they might be back to where they were, when they were, I wouldn't say at their best, because they got to get Aguero's got to come back into the team. Is he going to be as good? Jesus, is he going to get the goals for them? But there's a possibility. More of a possibility of it now than there was early on in the season. I'd written them off, definitely.
Is that the big challenge for Guardiola, short-term and long-term, if he's to stay at the club, as to how you replace Sergio Aguero? Because Aguero's 33 now. I think it's almost a year since he scored a Premier League goal, which he hasn't played much football in that, but it just shows how many injury problems he's had for a player that year in, year out would guarantee you 20 Premier League goals. Jesus has had lots of opportunities. Is he someone that, if they need to rely on him for the next 3-4 seasons, he's there? Or do City need to go and actually spend big again, and whoever the best of the best is out there, go and do whatever it takes to get them in?
Well, I'd give Jesus a good chance, Nathan. I think he has it. You know, he's been injured, or he's had this virus, I think, for a while now. I think it's probably injury that he hasn't played. You know, and when he was playing, it was when City weren't playing well. Now, I think if he was in the team the way City are playing at the moment, I think he's a good goal scorer. I think he's as good as there is around, and I certainly wouldn't buy anybody at the moment if I were Pep to give him a chance to do it. I think he'll do it. I like him. I think he's a good attitude. I think he will get goals.
Have your thoughts then on who's going to win the league changed over Christmas?
No, I still think Liverpool will win it. It won't be like it was last year because they have their own problems. Liverpool, I think in the long run they'd win it, but I wouldn't. A few weeks ago when I was talking to you, Nathan, I wasn't putting City in the loop at all. And I've changed my mind on that in seeing them in the last couple of weeks. I think they'll be up and about there, and I think they will challenge Liverpool. I still fancy Liverpool to win it, but I put City back in the race.
Just before we move on to Liverpool and move away from Manchester City, Colin Bell passed away this week, one of Manchester City's greatest ever players. They named a stand after him at the Etihad Stadium. He's a player you would have played against many times through the years?
Yeah, good few times. Nathan. He was a very, very good player at a time when Manchester City were coming out of the doldrums. You know, in my time at Manchester United, when I left in '63, they were relegated that year.
Right,
City were, and they were there for a few seasons as well, Nathan, until Malcolm Allison and Joe Mercer came along, and they bought a few players in. Franny Lee was in, Mike Summerby, and one of the big signings was Colin Bell from Bury. It wasn't an awful lot of money, but it became, Bell, Summerby, Lee were the big three when City went on to win. I think they won 4 trophies in 3 seasons, Nathan.
Yeah,
which was a great time for them, and he was one of the big players for City at that particular time.
What sort of player was he?
He was a right-sided midfield player. Nathan, that he was. What was it? Malcolm Allison, who was the coach, had a name for him. It was a famous horse, and I can't think.
Nijinsky.
Nijinsky, and he was that type of great engine, as they say nowadays. He could get up and down, score a few goals. He played on the right hand side, but was a very, very fit lad.
Right.
Covered the ground well. And was very successful. He unfortunately had a terrible injury at 29 where it actually finished him. He did come back, but he was never the same again. So he was part of the I think Manchester City as a club have treated the Colin Bell thing very, very well. They've been very respectful. They've named a stand after him on the ground. But he was certainly part of a terrific, because we were real challengers to them at that particular time. You know, they won the league in 68. We were running for the league in 68 at Leeds, and we won the League Cup and the First Cup that year. But they never lost the big trophy when they got there.
Right.
They won the league, then they won the FA Cup, then they won the League Cup and the Cup Winners' Cup in the same year. So they won 4 trophies in 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Which was a hell of a job. And that was it. Not that wasn't bad. It was very good. Like with Leeds, we lost a good few trophies, but we kept going after that, Nathan. You know, they finished in the 4th season. Then we went on to win the Cup and the league after them. But they were a terrific team.
Yeah.
Terrific team.
Looking earlier, he was one of those players that
City.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nathan, go on.
That game you've spoken about before, the 3 versus the 6.
Yes.
You played alongside him in that game.
I was in that team. Yeah, I played alongside him. He's a very quiet lad.
Right.
Very, very well mannered. Now, I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him. He was a very modest individual. Got on with the job. Actually, we did have a drink after the match. I think I was having a drink with him, but I don't remember him talking. he was so quiet. No, he was. And anybody I knew that knew him said he was a terrific lad.
Yeah.
Really good lad, and he was a great pro. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's certainly come across in all the tributes. His modesty as well has come across, and a sad loss, Colin Bell. You mentioned Liverpool then, the flip of Manchester City for them over Christmas, and we've seen over the past 5-6 weeks Liverpool get to the level at times of last season when they beat Leicester or when they beat Wolves, or even putting 7 past Crystal Palace. But then on the other side, there have been 3 performances now: Fulham, West Brom, and again, the last time out where it's just been so flat.
Yeah, Newcastle
as well.
Yeah. Well, it happens, Nathan, and they've lost an awful lot of players. You know, I mean, you have Henderson and one of the midfield, Fabinho at the back, for example, and you're bound to hit times with a team like that has been so consistent, so good. I still think they'll come out on top in the long run. But they played Southampton the other night, and like Southampton are a good team. There's a lot of good teams down. Well, they're not at the bottom now, but they're always hard to beat, and they have been very, very good. So they didn't play badly at Liverpool. There could be a slight concern, I think, about Salah, as we saw in the paper, Nathan, in the last couple of weeks. He was not complaining. He was as if he was looking for a move. I think his brother or somebody was talking on his behalf because he was annoyed because Alexander got the captaincy and he didn't get it. And this is very odd, you know, at this particular stage of the season.
Is it not just the normal flow of modern football where you get it out there and worst case scenario you get a big money new deal?
Well, it could look that way. It could be in a situation because all the players have agents now, and the players can't talk to other clubs, but the agents can talk on their behalf. So an agent could come back to Salah or anybody else. Look, I've got a deal here. I think if you get away, there'll be a lot more money in it. That happens in the game. And I'm not saying that's happened with Salah, but it was very odd for him to come out in the way that he did. That he wasn't happy about it, and he wasn't happy at the club because he wasn't made captain. That's very odd, and it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do Salah any good. I don't think he's played well recently, to be quite honest. He's missed a few chances that he doesn't normally miss, and it can upset a team like Liverpool, who've been going extremely well, and they could do without it. And the other thing with Liverpool, I think, they're having more teams getting at them now at the back than they did before, obviously because Van Dijk and Gomez and these guys are not playing. And I've always felt that Trent Alexander is a very, very good player, Nathan, going forward, but he's not a good defender.
Yeah.
And any time you've seen, like when they played Spurs there a few weeks ago, the goal that Spurs scored from and the chance they had all came down that side. And again, he's defending against Southampton for the goal was very, very bad. I mean, he could have headed it away. He could have done anything way before Ings got through to score. Now, I think he's a terrific player. Going forward, he's a terrific player, but he's not a good defender. And he's a relatively young lad, I know, and he's done extremely well. But really, I think there's more... Liverpool have to do more defending now than they did with the top-class players, Gomez, and I know I'm repeating myself now, but I have to emphasise that. And Robertson, I think, is terrific. He's a terrific defender, terrific going forward. But if Liverpool look like losing a goal, it's going to be down that right-hand side. And it's happened a few times now.
And you mentioned that a lot when talking about Liverpool, how good they'd been defensively, that actually great defensive sides don't actually have to do that much defending because the system works perfectly. When you see them now without Van Dijk and Gomez, is suddenly Alexander-Arnold really exposed in that back four? Because, listen, as you say, like the talent is there. He's picked week in, week out because what he brings to the side, as much in an attacking sense as anything else, and his range of passing and crossing is as good as anybody. But is there an extra pressure on him defensively now?
Better, I think his crossing and attacking is better. He's by far the best right back in the league at that particular, doing that particular job. I think when it comes to defending, I think, again, like when they were on top and Van Dijk and these guys were playing, they didn't have to do too much defending. Now they do. And obviously, the less defending you have to do, then your weaknesses are not going to be exposed. And the more defending you have to do now, it's going to be exposed. And I think that's what's happened to Liverpool on the right-hand side of the field.
Do they have to go and sign somebody then? Because you mentioned Southampton, he played Jordan Henderson and Fabinho, two centre-backs. The alternatives were Nate Phillips, who at 23 looks set to leave the club and never looked like he was going to make it, but is getting games. Or Reece Williams, who's a teenager, who's going to be thrown in and there's games every 3-4 days. Like, do you put your trust in the midfielders being able to do a job and young defenders slotting in here and there, or do they just need to go and get somebody and spend the money, even if Gomez and Van Dijk are eventually going to return?
I don't think they need to, Nathan. That's my take. Even with Henderson and Fabinho at the back, even the other day, you know, like they didn't cause any goals. They only lost 1-0, and Alexander was at fault for that. So I think they'd still be good enough with Henderson and Fabinho in that particular role. They've got Thiago coming back in the middle of the field, and that's it. But I with those two at the back, I still fancy Liverpool to win the league.
Right.
And because you got the players coming forward. I mean, the thing is that front, they're not scoring as many goals as they were, and obviously they have to defend a lot more. So that has to be the case. But I think they have enough, and I think if you look at Fabinho and Henderson in that position, you'd have to look around the league and say, well, who's better than them? Obviously, you want Van Dijk and Gomez back, definitely, but they're not there. But I think even with the players that they have, Liverpool, I still think they'll win the league.
How difficult is it, though?
Obviously not as comfortably, Nathan, as last year. You know, they had it this time last year. They had it won virtually. You know, so that's not going to be the case. So it's giving everybody a chance, including Manchester City, to come into it, and Manchester United. You know, and well, Chelsea have gone out of it a little bit. Spurs. So it gives all the other teams that they didn't have last year to give them a chance of taking over from them. But I think they'll still do it. So
if he needs to go with Henderson more often, like, you know, you spent your career playing central midfield, is it not a huge challenge for even a player like Henderson, who's probably physically well able to play centre half? Is it not a huge challenge, having spent his entire career to play centre midfield, to suddenly play centre back?
Oh, I think he'd be able to do it, Nathan. I think it's easier to step back. You know, he has the qualities. He's a big lad. He wins the ball well. He uses it well. He's quick enough to do it. No, I think he'd be okay. And then they've got Thiago coming back in the middle of the field. So I think they'd be okay there as well. You know, like Liverpool have a very, very strong pool of players, despite the injuries that they've had. And obviously they're going to have a bit of a dip. But they're still top of the league, or just about top of the league. I think they'll finish above Manchester United. And Manchester United are their nearest rivals. I know you'll come to them in a few minutes. Yeah. But if you take the season as it is, they've had a lot of injuries. There's no doubt about that. But I still think with the strongest team available at the moment, they're better than any other team. If Salah gets back on track again, particularly, you've still got Firmino and Salah, all the players up front. They've still got them, and good midfield players as well, Nathan.
Jurgen Klopp went on a little bit of a rant after the Southampton game about penalties and brought up Manchester United and how many penalties they've been getting since Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got the job. And as always, a lot is read into it. It's mind games. Is he losing it a little bit? Is he right to get involved in that sort of stuff? Can you understand what he's doing?
No. Klopp is a bad loser. And all the great managers, where we fair, are bad losers.
Yeah.
You know, they used to say in America, show me a bad loser and I'll show you a loser. I don't think Klopp can help it. You know, he just, I mean, in Manchester United, I remember he got I think the year before last, a draw at Manchester United, and he was complaining about them, you know, sitting back and parking the bus and all the various things. That happens. But, I mean, he's raising the point. I mean, I had to laugh at Solskjaer's response. He said, I think he was raising the point to get the referee's attention to it. Well, there was nobody better than Ferguson at doing that game.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I think most of them that can do it. I think he's a bad loser. And he's one of the reasons that makes him a great manager. Nathan.
Yeah.
But it gets silly sometimes, you know, when you're saying things like that. Just get on with it. You know, Liverpool have their fair chances of things going their way and getting VAR as anybody else. So I think you've got to take it on the chin. And I think for the likes of Klopp, it's not easy to take it on the chin.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette,